interesting, because I said, I've worked in planning all these years, I've never seen a report from Cross Noise, all of a sudden it's perfect for two reports.
Yeah, so it's not a planning, mine is,
The other one was not.
well, no, hers is tied to planning
Oh, is it?
matters.
Okay.
Vanessa's is tied to zoning and or planning subdivision, but it's new legislation, it's 2013.
That's
So
why
we're
I
just starting to see a lot of them, and it's intended for little pockets that are next to noisy places that wouldn't have been developed before. Now we need to know that they're,
The Gatsby Air Force is prime.
yeah.
See you hope it as well. Yes.
part.
Yes.
We had Christmas music.
Oh, look at his little face. Sausage fingers. Adam looks very handsome today.
That scene glass in the background, I don't really worship it.
You do actually, saint. My boyfriend wants to come back, so. Yeah. But.
Good morning, Willie. You just give him some space. You want to get him to talk to you today? Hey Bob, how are you doing?
I've got multiple layers.
Everything's good. Oh yeah. What? Well, you got one on too. It's not like it was. No, no, yeah, weddings, funerals, job interviews. I probably go to. Yeah. Well, I bought tea a couple of years ago. We're gonna get Willie one from the job. Oh, and it's really short and it was a little flat really tall. Those little kids. Did I call them kids? Well, and the height issues, so it's gone down, but it's kind of oozed out. Well, and
I know, but I think it's worth a while.
oh, I think we're taking, yeah, but it is honestly, I think honestly it makes us look foolish that we would waste staff time on a mixed use site sitting literally between two things that they want 3.7.
That's why I asked them.
Yeah, we're too.
So he's arguing about
Second player plans 22.
This is egregious. He's basically taking all I'll pick the best of all them.
I know it's changed, and I don't like the man, but I don't, but again, we've got 4 kids, and
So anyway, I'm sort of obviously wrong.
and there's nothing left to tell. It's not like it's gonna, it's disease is gonna spread.
Well, to the west.
But two of them have already been developed, according to my research. But they have controls in place. Good, I've got 13 out of here.
I know, that's the hard part. It's like
The built form controls that are in there were never tested with built form, the difference between these numbers
Good, good morning, everyone.
Francine, we have four.
Good morning, everyone. And a Happy New Year. The meeting is called to order. I apologize for being late. I was visiting the school where a 6-year-old girl died yesterday afternoon, after school was let out. I'm sure you saw it on the news, St. Raphael School. And the parents have said that they are discussing today whether they're going to ask North York Community Council to move a motion before noon today about parking at their site, so I'm just waiting for that. And I've advised the lead in transportation on my way in. Okay. Any declarations of interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act? Confirmation of the minutes of November 14th of last year. Councillor Pasternak, Councillor Carroll, all in favor, opposed, carried. We'll go over the list of items to be held, starting with item 6. Okay, we're holding item 6 for the chair. Item 7, Councillor Carmichael Greb. It's the public art plan. Yeah? Yeah. Moved, all in favor? Opposed, carried. Item 8, held under the name of Councillor Cole. Item 9, will hold. Item 10, will hold. Item 11, Councillor Carroll.
Yes, I can move that one. I'm not moving an expanded notice motion. It's just the,
All in favor?
Required. Thank you.
Opposed? Carried. Item 12, Councillor oh no. Oh, yes, moved. All in favor, opposed, carried. Item 13, Councillor Pasternak.
I'll move staff recommendations.
All in favor, opposed, carried. Councillor Pasternak, item 14.
I'll move staff recommendations.
Thank you. All in favor, opposed, carried. Councillor Pasternak, 15.
Yes, I'll move staff recommendations.
All in favor, opposed, thank you. And again, Councillor Pasternak. Item 16.
Yes, I'll move staff recommendations.
All in favor, opposed, thank you. 17, Councillor Pasternak.
I will also move staff recommendations.
Thank you. All in favor, opposed.
It's a good day for Ward 10, I can assure you.
Parking amendments on Cartwright.
I think he gave, I said earlier, I think he gave the staff some Hanukkah gelt, chocolate money.
So
No, I
let's
just
hold
laid on some
items-
guilt.
Let's hold items 18 and 19 for Councillor Cole. 20, oh yes, as well. 21 as well. 22, 3, we're holding all of them because the councillors aren't here. Are there any that we can let go? Yes. Councillor Carroll, you can move 26.
Yes, Madam Speaker, I can with a slight amendment. Sorry, after discussion with our neighboring councillor, is this special events? Yes. With the single amendment that item 2 in the special events for Armenian Community Center Summerfest. I'm sorry, I haven't got the written amendment for you here because I'm scrambling to keep up. The amendment that Sunday, July 15th, from 5 to 1 a.m. be changed to 5 to midnight. That's for the Armenian Summerfest.
Oh, yes, I'm supposed to move something too.
Oh, is there a change to,
Yeah.
that's part two
The
of,
roller derby double header.
oh, this is an additional item.
And Grandiosa Festa.
So maybe we should hold it down so
yes,
that we can give
holding
the
it
clerk
down,
our
too.
changes. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, you've got my change? Okay.
Oh, she's got them.
Okay.
All right, all in
Okay,
favor?
good to go.
Opposed, carried. Okay, so, a motion to introduce the following items. There are 13. One, Counselor Carroll regarding reduction of speed limit on Old Shepherd Avenue. So this is just a request to add? Yes. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Also, Counselor Carroll, reduction of speed limit on Ernest Avenue and Fay Drive.
So
All
those are
in
both
favor?
50 to 40. Thank you.
Counselor Burnside, parking amendments on Vanderhoof Avenue.
Yes, 27.37.
All in favor? Opposed? Carried. To introduce Counselor Burnside, St. Denis Drive. All in
Correct.
favor? Okay. Counselor Burnside, Killdeer Crescent.
It's
All in
parking
favor?
bonanza, yes.
Counselor Min Wong, update on investigation into 7 wax wing tree removal. All in favor? I'll move it for you. Counselor Ajameri, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, my God.
That's right.
41, 42, 43, 44, 45, and 46. All in favor? You want me to read out what they are? One is Ancaster Road and Regent Road. One is no parking on Compton Crescent. One is parking amendments on Victory Drive. One is always compulsory stop control at Tavistock and Lexfield. One is parking amendments on Tumpain Street. One is parking amendments in the Downsview neighborhood. And the other one, okay, so that's me, all in favor, opposed, carried. Now is Counselor Burnside on Malcolm Road. Introduction?
Yes,
All in
it's a road
favor?
alteration.
Opposed, carried, okay. Item 1, please. Oh, no, we can't deal with item 1, it's not 10 o'clock yet. Counselor Carmichael Greb is here, let's deal with her items. So the first one that was held under Carmichael Greb's name is what? 9. $50 to $60 Eglinton Avenue West.
And I have an amendment for that.
Go ahead.
Please, that the community consultation, the notice for the community consultation meeting be given to landowners and residents within a minimum of 500 meters of the site.
Everyone got that? All in favor? Opposed? Carried? Item, no. We're looking for the next one for Councillor Carmichael Grebs. Yes. 2360 Young Street, item 21.
And that adopts staff recommendations.
All in favor? Opposed? Carried? And 22,
Adopt staff recommendations.
all in favor? Opposed? Carried? 23,
Adopt staff recommendations.
all in favor? Opposed? I'm sorry, 24, speed limit reduction Glencairn Avenue,
Adopt staff recommendations.
all in favor? Opposed? Carried? And 25, designation of fire routes,
Staff recommendations, please.
all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, we're gonna deal with Councillor Cole's holds. First one is number 8.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Number 8, I'd like,
3000 Dufferin Street.
I'd like to defer that to the February meeting.
Okay, all in favor of deferral? Opposed? Carried. What's the next one we were holding for
Is
council?
it 18?
Yes,
I'd like to move this,
Cartwright Avenue.
I'll move the staff recommendations on 18.
All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Item 19,
Um,
removal of accessible parking space,
again-
Livingston Avenue.
Again, I'd move the staff recommendation.
All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Item 20,
And then 20, do we have a community council meeting in March?
this is Lawrence Avenue West at Dufferin. Do we have a community council meeting in March?
Okay, then I'll move it to the April 4th meeting.
April 4th meeting, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, item 27.6. Are there any questions on that? I'd be prepared to move it. Items, 80 Carl Hall Road, Class 4 noise area classification. Oh, no, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, I'm voting against this. Someone else has to move it. I'll move it. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, Counselor Carroll's moving? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. All right. 10 o'clock public hearing. Counselor Cole, do you have people here to speak to this?
I do not see any of them, so I guess no.
Probably stuck on the TTC.
Well, I was driving up Yonge Street, that's the problem. TTC's moving quickly.
Okay, so let's just hold that in case anyone shows up. Let's deal with item 2. Counselor Carmichael Greb, do you have anyone here to speak to this item?
This item I will be deferring until the next meeting.
Okay, Counselor Carmichael Greb has deferred item 2. Final report, common element condominium, 1238 to 1240 Avenue Road. Is there anyone here to speak to that? Okay, all in favor of deferral? Opposed? Carried. But we can't deal with that. What are we gonna do? Would people be okay with moving the introduced items? Oh. How perspicacious of you. I'm sorry, we can't deal with the next public hearing. It's not until 10:15. Okay, Counselor Carroll. You would like to discuss the reduction of speed limit on Old Shepherd Avenue.
Yes, these are.
Item 35.
Yeah.
You'll
Mine are
see it
two
on your
fairly
desk?
Yeah, mine are
Okay.
two fairly straightforward ones because I'm not going to the 30 kilometers. These are just areas where we're reducing to 40 kilometers to add on to already changed speeds in the roads leading to them. Both 35 and the next one. We're just waiting.
It's on your
for-
desk.
No, it's not. Is it?
Not yet.
Okay, here it is. Sorry.
I'll gladly vote on
Here it
anything
comes.
I could read.
Here it comes. Here it comes. Here it comes.
We'll give
So
you a
got
moment.
that. 35, and there's 36. Oh, this is the whole shooting match. We can vote now because Councillor Shiner has the whole package.
So you're reducing the speed limit from 50K to 40K on Old Shepherd Avenue.
That's right.
Counselor Shiner, we're
Old
just waiting to hear from you.
I have a question. There's a question of the mover, where the
Where is it?
HE double hockey sticks is Old Shepherd
Yes.
Avenue. Shepherd Avenue, as you know, is a major road that we all know. Old Shepherd is about 2 blocks north, and it runs from Victoria Park to a side street called Muirhead. It also has a cross-section called Bryan Drive that has already been changed to 40 kilometers. This makes it a 40-kilometer journey
Excellent.
throughout the entire popular shortcut.
Excellent. I'd be prepared to support that. Would you, Counselor Shiner? Absolutely. All right. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Item 36, Counselor Carroll, Ernest Avenue and Fay Drive.
Again, I may have a question of the mover, where the HE double hockey sticks is Ernest Avenue. Ernest and Fay are part of the same very popular shortcut of Victoria Park.
Thank you.
And there are 2 other streets that lead to Bryan Drive, which has already been
Thank you.
changed to 40. Thank you.
All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Counselor Burnside, Vanderhoof Avenue.
Yes, parking prohibitions in industrial area. There are vehicles parked in an area that makes it difficult for movement in the business park.
Any questions? Any comments? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Counselor Burnside, St. Denis Drive.
Yes, this is in Flemington Park Neighborhood Improvement Area. There's a prohibition between 2 a.m. and 6 a.m. During the winter months, and people don't have anywhere to park. They're parking there and they're getting $40 tickets. And
That is item 38. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. 39, Killdeer Crescent, parking regulation, Counselor Burnside.
parking. Sorry, I'm being distracted.
Harassed?
Well, there's that too.
This time it was Councillor Carroll harassing.
This is to actually rescind parking on a local road as a result of resident input.
Any questions? Any comments?
Oh, we're saving a lot of staff reports.
All in favor? Opposed? Carried. We mean no disrespect, people on the right. Thank you. Okay. Counselor Min and Wong, we're gonna hold. Well, someone call his office to find out what he wants us to do. Would someone? Shelley, do you know the issue that Counselor Min and Wong is interested in? Wax wing tree removal? Item 40?
Sorry, I should tap my microphone on. I do not know this issue in detail, and I will have a great deal of difficulty voting for anything to do with a tree without a staff report.
Okay, so let's,
Madam Speaker.
yes?
That's what this is asking for. It
Yes,
says
Okay.
2 trees were removed. Can I
So
get a?
Counselor Pasternak is prepared to,
it's a report request.
yes,
Yeah,
to move it. All in favor? Opposed? Carried.
get the report, yeah.
Okay. The next one is 41, Ancaster and Regent. This is on behalf of the church community. There's a church there on the corner. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Which one? Yeah. 42, Compton Crescent. Look, my assistant wrote these. Any problems on Compton Crescent? All in favor? Opposed? Carried? Oh, Victory Drive, this was part of the parking restrictions when we put in the hospital on Wilson. Any questions, issues? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Lexfield, compulsory stop. This was raised at a 31 Division Police Consultant Committee, whatever they're called. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. 45 is requested by the parents and school community of Tumpain Public School. All in favor? Opposed? 46. 46 is tweaking that happened when staff brought in the amendments for the parking that was put in for the local neighborhood hospital. Okay, this is complicated, so I need a formal motion to reopen and a 2/3 vote. It's the changes because of the hospital that were put into the local community. As you know, when a hospital is put in, there's a lot of people who will park on local roads instead of paying for parking. So, I'll move a reopening. All in favor? Opposed? Carried? And we need 2/3. Yeah. We need a show of hands to show 2/3 support. Yes? Come on, raise your hand. All right. Thank you. We should just have one with you. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Councillor Burnside, you're next. 47.
Yes, this is cleaning up a bunch of parking regulations that were outdated, as well as making permanent some temporary directional changes on Malcolm Road.
Go ahead. Question to the mover?
Did you poll or survey, have staff commented on any of this?
Is that for me?
You are the mover, aren't you?
Yeah, sorry, I wasn't paying attention. Yes, in fact, I've had probably about 15 consultations with the community. This is a grassroots initiative. There's a condominium going in on the street, which was fiercely opposed by the community. They lost, and there were some major safety concerns about the configuration before construction.
I don't know. I mean, you've told me repeatedly that we need staff reports to do things like this. I'm just wondering whether there's been.
This was done by staff.
I don't. Where's the staff report?
Staff to the floor, please.
Peter?
Councillor Pasternak's question is, where is the staff report?
No, we have not prepared a staff report. We did assist with the motion and the preparation of the drawing. We did not have sufficient time to prepare a report, given the urgency of this matter.
Oh, I just, there seems to be one set of rules for other wards, another set of rules for Ward 10. I don't know why this is here without a staff report.
Sorry, did you have no, sorry.
So we have another
The local councillor has one standard for Ward 10 when it comes to stop signs, parking controls, and speed limits, and another standard for other wards. I'm just wondering whether there's been a change of heart or
there's a-
pivot.
So, but I have
Did you
questions
elaborate? I don't understand.
Can I have
There are
questions
questions,
of staff first?
there are questions of staff. Councillor Shiner first.
So, who is responding here? And who are you?
I am Dan.
With
With respect, I am. Yes. Thank you for the opportunity. Yes, I'm Dan Clement, so I'm the acting manager of traffic operations here for North York District.
Hi, Dan. So, I understand from my colleague that we're at the tail end of construction of the condominium here, and the roadway has been closed and is going to be reopened. This is a recommendation to make the short end of it one way only and the rest of it two ways. Have you reviewed this?
Yes, we have.
Are you supportive of the recommendations?
We have no objections to the recommendations.
Thanks. Okay, so you're not objecting to the recommendation.
That-
And the reason for these recommendations are,
To address the concerns of the community
which is,
with cut-through traffic.
So they are looking that the traffic not be able to cut through off of Laird Drive and Millwood Drive now into the community in that direction.
Yes,
This would provide full access for the condominium?
yes.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Carroll.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Without a report, I don't know that, because the first recommendation is an actual permanent road alteration, so I don't have a report of the financial impact. Who is going to be footing the bill here? This is a something needed as a result of a condominium development. Is the condominium developer paying for this?
No, the road alterations would be funded by the City of Toronto.
And why would this not have been part of the negotiations of final site plan approval if this is needed because of the condominium accesses?
I can't speak to the site plan approval. From traffic operations standpoint, this is an enhancement in the operation.
But it's not driven completely by the, well, I guess you don't know because you haven't had a chance to write a report on it. It's not driven completely by the access and egress to and from the condominium?
No, that's part of it, but that's not the entire concern. There were pre-existing concerns.
Okay.
Thank you. Are there any other questions of staff? Yes?
So this, this condominium development, are you aware of when it was approved?
No, Councillor.
If I were to say it was 2013, you would have no comment on that, correct? You would have no, okay, thank you. Oh, and one more question. Was this your understanding, and you may not know because it was another staff member on the ground, but these alterations, were they also related to the alterations done at the intersection of Millwood and Laird, which was a city part of the road safety plan? And was this sort of a byproduct of that or related to that, and had nothing, it wasn't so much that it had anything to do with the condominium and placating condo owners who have not even bought units. This was more about this was the impetus for this was actually the re-engineering of the intersection at Malcolm/Millwood/Southvale/Millwood.
It is partially related to the recent reconstruction of Millwood and Laird with respect to the removal of the right turn channel.
Thank you.
All right, there are more questions. Councillor Carroll?
Yeah, I'm sorry to ask a follow-up, but I'm having trouble understanding number 8 because Prestine Heights School is on the other side of the Don Valley from this intersection. Prestine Heights is nowhere near here. Well, I know it quite well because my grandchildren went to school there, and it's nowhere near Millwood and Laird. So I'm kind of confused.
Councillor, we were confused also. That is an existing bylaw entry that we are taking this opportunity to rescind.
Okay, okay. So it's sort of an error correction we're hoping to do.
That's correct.
So I guess my only question is there any, apart from the financial impact question that I've already asked, that we don't know the cost of this and the financial impact, are there any other things here that our understanding would be enhanced by deferring to get a report?
Sorry, what?
Well, this is a walked-on notice of motion. Would our understanding of this before voting on it be in any way enhanced if we were to ask the councillor to defer it and get a report? Or is it pretty much all here in this lengthy motion?
I believe the motion captures what we're, with the exception of the financial impact, what we're trying to achieve here.
So if that's the only thing outstanding, is there in any way a possibility of your roughly estimating what the financial impact of it would be?
Counselor, I would estimate the portable curbing required for the modular islands would be in the amount of several $1,000s, possibly, but not exceeding $10,000.
I see, thanks so much. That, I know that's difficult to do off the cuff. Thanks so much, yeah.
Thank you very much, transportation staff. Okay, so we have a mover, and Councillor Pasternak would like to speak to the motion. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Clearly, I don't think it's any surprise that I'm somewhat frustrated by some of these walk-on motions that have come here today. The all-way compulsory stop that's already carried, the two all-way compulsory stops that have already carried, the voices of objection when this is done in the past have been silent today. Ward 10 needed one at the corner of Robbie and King High. A vital all-way stop control to ensure community safety, and the voices, the cry from the people on the left here against it were mind-boggling and earth-shattering, and yet here today we have two all-way control stops approved with no voices of objection without a staff report. I won't be supporting the item
Gotta
before
talk
us.
about this item.
I am. I won't be supporting the item before us. It's too convoluted. It doesn't really come with a staff report other than some kind of confusing map on the back. The local councillor has told me repeatedly not to do walk-on motions regarding traffic control and calming. And I won't be supporting this confusion over this Pristine Heights School, which has to be resolved. And we have no source of funding for the capital work on item 1. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillors Carroll, Shiner, and Burnside.
I'll speak.
Madam Speaker, I appreciate, with respect, I appreciate what Councillor Pasternak's concerns are, but those were the reasons for my questions. To my mind, the confusion over Pristine Heights is in fact resolved by the answers I got from staff. And I asked the last question, which is a difficult question to ask of staff, but I clearly heard from them that save and accept the cost, which is $10,000 roughly or less. They say they really, in writing a report on this, would give us very little more illumination. They really say that it's all contained in the recommendations. Pristine Heights and some of the others are rescindments of existing old East York bylaws that they in fact found themselves troubling and misunderstood. And so this is really the reason there are so many clauses here, and that's our reason for concern. But the reason there are so many clauses is there's a lot of cleanup contained herein. And so I'm prepared to support the motion.
Councillor Burnside?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. It's unfortunate that Councillor Pasternak didn't listen or didn't hear the questioning of staff by Councillor Carroll, but be that as it may, this is not about stop signs. I've never criticized the councillor for walking on stop sign issues. My criticism more has to do with the actual facts of the matter and the unsupported, the fact that many of these stop sign requests are unsupported by facts. As staff mentioned, there's not a lot more to add to this. A report really wouldn't help Councillor Pasternak's understanding of the situation, but if he wants to speak offline, I'm happy to explain it to him.
Councillor Shiner.
Madam Speaker, the issue in front of us is some amendments to the parking regulations and to the roadway that's at the corner of Laird and Millwood Road, and I do know that, as I used to tell my former representative of the area, I would cut through these streets all the time on my way home when I lived up at Bayview and Shepherd, so I knew them well. But the issue is, I think, a matter that the council brought to our attention of some urgency as the road is about to be reopened. It's been closed for a number of years for the construction of the condominium at the corner of Malcolm and Millwood. And this is trying to clean up some zoning matters and make it safer when it reopens. which I'm supportive of. My other colleague is correct. It would have been better if there would have been a memorandum from city staff, at least attached to this, detailing what these changes were, and even that they had no objection to it, and for the time, so we'd have something in front of us in lieu of just a counselor's report. But I am satisfied in questioning here in a public forum of staff that they have no objections to this, and it will accomplish what's needed, and I'm prepared to support it.
All right, we have a motion by Councillor Burnside. All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Opposed? 1, 2. It carries, thank you. So is there anyone in the audience here for items 1 or 2?
We should just go ahead with one then.
Okay, so we'll deal with item 1.
Madam Speaker?
Yes?
I'm over here. I did have a question of staff, because this is
On item 1?
on the one on
Okay,
Cartwright.
so no one is here for item 1 or 2. If you're here on any item, please register with the clerk. There is a motion, there is a question on item 1, Councillor Shiner to staff.
There's a letter here and a subsequent letter in regards to the neighboring properties to this and what the impact might be between the noise that they emit and the new homes going next door. So, and who's here to answer the questions? We're changing then the permitted noise, are we not, under this? But this is to permit housing right next to a manufacturing operation, am I right?
Yes, that is correct.
And the neighbors and their solicitor have raised concerns. Can you tell me what concerns they've raised, because I see the letter here, and how they're being mitigated?
Yes, the industries in the area would be concerned with losing their Ministry of Environment certificate. And so what this report ensures that there's on-site mitigation to ensure that that does not occur. The on-site mitigation includes central air conditioning, a 3-meter-high acoustical fence. It also includes limiting windows on the second floor and making sure that the windows and the walls meet ministry requirements in terms of noise mitigation on site.
So the noise mitigation will be to the interior of the house, and the exterior, which would be the rear yards, will be a tall fence, but the noise will actually get over that?
The wall is 3 meters high, so we're not anticipating in terms of rear yard amenity. In this case, the lots abut the rear yards of the industries on Bridgeland, and we are satisfied that there is sufficient noise attenuation with that wall.
The issues that are raised in the letter, have they been dealt with, do you believe, in advance from the solicitor that's here or not? Because it's a November 14th letter. Like, if someone responded to this, it's talking about trees cutting down, noise mitigation, it's 3 months ago. I don't want to see that we're approving something and find after, when people move in, that then they complain about the businesses next door, and the businesses are forced to relocate because we allowed residential there. And I don't want the local councillor to be the one in the middle of it later if these issues arise. Have you sat down or have you discussed these matters with the neighboring property owner that's raised these concerns?
There were a number of community meetings that the staff had where this, where the industry was in attendance, but also staff did speak to Jeff Roberts yesterday about these issues. And the purpose of the Class 4 is actually to permit these industries to emit the noise at their current levels, so it's actually protecting that industry.
Right, but what's the current use of the land prior to this application? The one that's getting the
It was,
townhouses?
it was residential,
It is currently residential?
currently residential, yes.
Okay, I'll leave it to the local counselor, it's his ward.
Okay, that's
And
it for
here-
questions?
No, Madam Chair.
And there are no speakers?
I have questions.
There are speakers? Did you register with the clerk? Oh, fine. Okay, so we're dealing with item 1, the final report on Jane Osler Boulevard and Cartwright Avenue? Okay. So you have 5 minutes to speak. Please identify yourself.
Yes, my name is Jeffrey Roberts. I represent the owner of the industrial building to the north of the property. The owner is Elite Blouse and Skirt Manufacturing Limited. And the current tenant is Tyco. Tyco employs, I would say, hundreds, probably over 700. They have 3 shifts. We met with Emily Rossellini about 5 years ago regarding this application, and our concerns were similar to the community, but in addition, the rear loading doors of the property are located right near the proposed houses 4 and 5. Now, perhaps the noise concern has been addressed. We're not sure. I just spoke with Vanessa briefly yesterday. But our other concerns were that we don't want complaints for noise because it's a large employer. And secondly, there's also exhaust fumes and vibrations from those loading doors. And we can't have complaints later on. There's a big employer, 700 people, and perhaps they want to expand, and they're going to be there at least 6 to 10 years more. We just want assurances that we're not going to have complaints with the functioning of that business or whatever business may be there. There's also another 3 acres that can be built out, and so we don't want any problems. This has been in business. There've been business continuously in that property for over 40 years, so we don't want problems later on. So we want assurances. Whoever buys that property, or I can see that there's also there's already a city agreement. We weren't consulted. We asked to be consulted back in 2012 with Emily Rossellini, and we were somehow cut off. And we gave I have the copies of the emails, plus Emily Rossellini spoke to us as late as 2014 about this, and we were just cut off. So we want to have assurances that our tenant, a huge employer in North York, is not going to be affected, or whatever employer that goes into that building in the future, or whatever expansion. Secondly, I see a tentative agreement has been made on cutting down trees in that property. Well, one of the trees, at least one of the trees, is on the lot line, and we told the city about that, and so we're not only concerned, and the Tyco's employees use that tree for shade during lunch breaks in the summer and the spring, and we strongly object to that tree being cut down, not only because of the prejudice to the employees, but also because of our property rights. So we can't make an agreement to cut down a tree that's halfway on our property as well. So those are our concerns, and hopefully council will address that.
Are there any questions? Sir, don't go away. Counselor, you have a question?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for coming today. Can you just describe what type of business your client is in his operations on that site?
Tyco Corporation, it's a multinational corporation, And in that particular building, their biggest production, you know those fire alarms that you have in your homes? They make most of them for Canada and parts of the United States. And they're very technologically advanced. I've been, you know, you have to put on boots when you go on to, and gloves when you go on into their building. And they're constantly upgrading and technologically. I think they're on 3 shifts now. They're that busy, and they probably want more space.
But fair to say that because of the use, it generates a fair amount of noise that is even at times in conflict with the existing residential neighborhood.
Right, so those trucks, they have to deliver the product. There's front-loading doors, there's back-loading doors. It's a huge enterprise, and this has been an industrial building, I think, since 1972.
Yeah, and sorry, the tree you mentioned, is it on, which side of the property line is it on?
I think it's halfway on the property line. If you go look, the fence has been pushed over, and the tree trunk is, honestly, I haven't gone in the last month or so. I mean, I knew this out like the back of my hand a few years ago, but...
You mentioned there was no opportunity for you to be consulted with, but then you mentioned meeting with city planning staff in 2012, 2014, and just recently.
Not recently, yesterday.
Yesterday, that's
So
recently.
2000, I didn't meet, I spoke yesterday,
okay.
because I got a notice of this, but we had put on a notice, the city and the clerk and Emily Rossellini, to keep us informed of what's going on back in 2012. We got consulted in 2014, but then I just got this notice through my accountant. I was cut out, and we gave both my name and the accountant's and the lawyer's name, Murray Chussit. And I just read the back agreement. There's an agreement to cut down trees. There's nothing about the vibrations and the exhaust. I see there is something about noise, and that was one of our main concerns 5 years ago, and I hope there won't be complaints. That's fine, great, but people should know there's also vibrations and there's exhaust, there's trucks coming in.
Great.
So we go to electric cars. I mean, you have to be realistic.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Mr.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Okay. Go ahead,
Sorry,
Councilor
I
Shiner.
didn't catch your name, sir.
Jeff Roberts.
Mr. Roberts. So I understand that there are some houses on Astral Street which also are adjacent to the back of your property. Are you receiving complaints at all about the noise from Tycos, from those houses at all?
I'm not aware. However, the loading doors are on the east part of the property. See, so what's on Astral Drive right now is a big parking, 3 acres of parking, right? It's not to say that there won't be built in the future. I mean, it is zoned for employment.
Right.
But Tyco, because they have so many employees, they wanted 450 parking spaces. And we had an agreement back then when they moved in with Milton Berger was the counselor, and so that's the case right now. So just the immediate thing is the loading doors that are in existence. I can't speak to what's going to happen in the future.
No, I tried to understand that in looking at the diagram, and then you managed to find Murray Chussit to represent you.
Yes, he passed away.
Where'd you find Murray?
Murray was actually the lawyer when we built this property in 1972, and he throughout, he dealt with Mel Assman, Milton Berger, and etc. throughout the building of this property, and then getting the parking for Tyco back in 1997 because it needed a special approval by City Council.
Okay, thank you
I mean,
very much.
it's a huge employer. I think it's a big plus to North York, and it would be a shame to do anything to. I'm not against the development, but just we want reassurance that I'm not going to bother Tyco going forward or whatever employer.
I appreciate that.
Thank you.
for
Thank
coming.
you.
No more questions? Speakers? Councillor Cole?
I have questions of staff, Madam Chair.
Staff to the floor, please.
I'm here for the applicant.
Oh, I'm sorry.
In the matter that this was called, I was confused as to the start of this, so I apologize for that.
That's fine.
I mean, I'd like
That's
to-
fine, sir.
Thank you.
Are there any other speakers on this item? Thank you. Go ahead, sir.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the committee. My name is Bob Dragicevic. I'm the planning consultant for the owner, Mr. Lecce and Sunfield Homes. And this application has been around, as pointed out, for quite some time. And we have been working with staff very closely, and in particular with respect to this matter of the industry, very aware of the circumstance of the juxtaposition of residential to employment use. And what I would want to point out to the committee is that in the staff report, there's an indication of the amount of work that was done relative to the industry so as to ensure that there wouldn't be a negative impact. The matter that's before you is to rezone the land with a number of very specific provisions built into it that are specifically related to noise attenuation so as not to cause an interference with the industrial operations to the north, all of which were assessed in not one but as many as 3 noise reports, all of which were peer-reviewed by the city. And those reports and their recommendations are actually carried forward in attachment 8 to the report in the conditions of draft plan. And I won't take you to every one of them, but they're numbered 6 through 11, which deal with fencing, notification, control on second-story windows, an updated acoustical report at the time of the building permits to ensure compliance prior to occupancy confirmation, and those sorts of matters, along with warning clauses. So these matters have been addressed from a noise perspective, not only within the proposed draft plan conditions, but as well in the zoning conditions, which, as you can tell in the attachment, are very particular to this development, which initially was an 11 lot proposal and subsequently reduced. The 2 units in question that are closest in the area of concern are numbers 4 and 5, and they have very particular requirements associated with them to mitigate the effects and not to create a condition that would be negative to the industrial operations. So I think, you know, this particular proposal includes a reference to a Class 4 designation. That's similar to the matter that you dealt with earlier in item number 6, although this is being done at the same time as the application. So I think that from our perspective, we're here to support the staff recommendations for approval, again, on the basis of the the careful study that has been undertaken to ensure that this will be a compatible relationship between the already designated residential lands and zoned residential lands to this slightly more intensive form of development. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions?
Just one quick one. When
Yes?
did your client first submit this application?
So it's a 2010 application. It's been a long time in the mill.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Speakers, Councillor,
I have questions of staff, Madam Chair.
staff to the floor. You may be seated. Thank you.
Could staff just explain to me the kind of practical impact of the change of the Class 4 noise area classification? What that means for both the current emitter of noise, and to the residential, both existing and new, that would be next to the site?
I want to start out by explaining that these are existing residential lots that are being reconfigured for this plan of subdivision. The surrounding properties are Class 1. We're asking for Class 4 for the subject properties. That allows, it's actually in favor for Tyco. They have concerns about their continuing operating on site, so this ensures that there's on-site mitigation done to ensure that they can continue operating as they have operated for many years. The mitigation that's being proposed by Jade Acoustics as peer-reviewed through the noise study is a combination of several different things, limiting operable windows, the placement of windows, the type of windows, the acoustical fence at 3 meters to deal with the noise, the existing noise from Tyco Industries. There are other matters that are secured in the draft plan of conditions, subdivision conditions. We are also ensuring that there be more detailed review. There's sometimes grading changes that are done through the actual development. And so the plan of subdivision conditions address that.
And beyond the mitigation, noise mitigation efforts and safeguards, the deputy mentioned the vibrations and exhaust that their operation may create. What mitigating steps have been taken to address those potential negative impacts?
So that would be addressed through the operable windows and the central air conditioning requirements for the development.
And just I'll kind of go through one other point that was mentioned by the deputy. Where does this tree sit? Do we know whose property it's on?
We'll have to check with forestry. We believe it's right on the property line.
And in an instance like that, it's, I guess, I know around this chamber, we guard trees pretty viciously at times. But this one's going down. So I'm just curious, how's that decision made when it sits on a property line?
There are trees that are involved on this property, and there would be a requirement for 24 replacement trees.
So there is a replacement plan of 24?
Yes.
And can that be conducted in such a way that, does that all have to be on the residential applicant's property?
There's also a cash in lieu a requirement or provision that this particular applicant has said that they would like to use. So
If the cash in lieu can't be used for the adjacent private property, can it?
no.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Madam Chair.
Are there any other questions of staff? Okay, speakers. Councillor Cole?
Yeah, I would like to move two amendments. And clerks has them, I think can put them on the screen. Number one is to direct planning staff to conduct a lot study on the residential streets bounded by Highway 401, Dufferin Street, Caledonia Road, and Orphis Road to identify and discourage lot severances and assembly in the area. Number two is to direct city planning to review noise and vibration attenuation measures, or it should say further noise and attenuation measures, and report to city council at the January meeting. As you heard, this application has been in the mix since 2010. And which obviously I understand why the applicant is anxious to see this go through. But I think there are a few other issues that have to be addressed. And I hope that the time between now and the council meeting, we can look to see if we have done as thorough a job as we can on the noise issues, and that can involve consulting and speaking to the property owner who's next door. It's obviously an issue that the existing residents are concerned about, and so I want to make sure we've covered everything there. The lot study, this development application is the backyards of two existing residential properties. So this area has some 300-foot deep lots, some extremely wide ones, and if anyone who lives in this kind of neighborhood that's nestled in between the highway and industrial properties gets a knock on their door probably every single day of someone looking to buy their house to create another one of these. And so I think we just need to get an assessment of where those soft sites might be, where they might be, and what's coming. And so I'd like to pass those two amendments, Madam Chair.
Okay, so,
Question of the,
yes, Councillor, go ahead.
so are you sending the item to council with these two motions and without recommendations? Which I'm fine with if you get.
Yeah, like, we can do that. I mean, I think
Yeah.
at the end, that's the clearest way.
Okay.
Well, it may not be the clearest way, but
It
it's the
gives
most
us
expedient.
it gives us the ability to do this
Yes.
work.
All right, so we have these amendments on the floor.
So I will brief comment.
Okay, go
I
ahead.
appreciate very much what the council's trying to do here, and I also appreciate what the businesses nearby have, because the conflict between the two might be very hard to resolve. And our ability to maintain employment areas in the city is always under pressure. So many of the employment areas are trying to be converted to mixed-use areas, which we're not permitting. And when you have development on the borders of them, it still continues to challenge them. So if a development is approved next to it, as this is being recommended by staff, but the council's looking at the noise measures, and if they're built and then there are continual complaints, the experience has been that the businesses relocate because even with the Class 4 environmental assessment, which allows them to have the noise, it doesn't mean that they won't be inundated with complaints and end up moving. And as the applicant said as well, who owns the property, he has not developed the full site. Half of that site is over 400 parking spaces, which is why there's no concerns from the other residential properties that are close by. So I would strongly hope that between now and council, there's some way to better resolve the noise that may be there before this goes forward, because we would be permitting houses to go into an area where there are possibly evening, weekend, night noises and complaints, and that may then be a problem that we're unable to resolve. So I will support it without recommendations, and hopefully between now and council, something will come up where the local councillor can find that we can do a little bit better.
Thank you, Councillor Shiner. I totally agree. So we have what's up on the board now, and it would then go to council without recommendation, but we would be voting on these now. All right? So all in favor of what's up on the board now? Fine, that carries, and that it go to council without recommendation overall. Carried. Thank you. So we've dealt with items 1 and 2. We understand that there are 3 deputants to item 3, and only 3. They are Avi Esakov, Hillel Gudez, and Clement Stigas. So if you could ready yourselves to speak, we'll deal with item number 3 next. I was going to deal with the Robinson item, but she's not here. No one is here? Okay, so that's fine. Sir, which one are you?
Just a minute.
Sir, your name, please?
Wait. Hello, my name is Clement Stigas.
Yes.
And I have been a resident of the neighborhood for over 30 years. My residential property is directly behind the proposed development on the north side. More specifically, my backyard is adjacent to the narrow city laneway between the north side of the proposed development and my home. Let me start by saying that I support the revitalization of our neighborhood with the Wilson TTC subway station so close and great shops nearby. I understand the desire to increase the density and mixed use. A few years ago, I understand the city undertook a neighborhood revitalization consultation for Wilson Avenue, and that one of the recommendations was to allow the development, but not to exceed 8 stories. The proposed development under discussion far exceeded the recommendation. I ask that the council please adhere to the recommendations, which was the result of the public input. Finally, for residents like myself, whose properties directly neighbor the proposed development on the north side, I ask that you take this fact into careful consideration. The other buildings at the southeast and southwest corner of Wilson Avenue and Wilson Heights are not located directly next to residential homes. They are next to industrial properties. For this proposed development, my backyard will be facing 13 stories. At the moment, the existing buildings are 4 stories. I value my privacy and the sunlight, which helps my lovely garden grow a wide variety of vegetables in the summer. These will be jeopardized if the height of the proposed development is approved. Once again, I ask that council please defer to the neighborhood study, which recommended development be no more than 6 stories on Wilson Avenue. This will be more in keeping with the neighborhood character and will respect the adjacent landowners as well as the previous public input. Finally, I ask that regardless of my decision made by the council that the developer be asked to closely consult with the landowners who directly neighbor that proposed development to discuss potential options for fencing, tree planting, and uses of the laneway. Thank you very much for
Sir?
the time. Yeah.
Sir, you understand that we're voting today to attend the OMB hearing in opposition. Council is opposed to the development.
Okay.
All right.
But I just want to express my,
Yes.
okay.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Avi Izakov. My concern is what direction is going to be given to the solicitor and what objections are going to be raised to increasing the urban density by roughly fivefold. My understanding also from the previous meetings is that there was some kind of a traffic consultant who was recommended or advised, and there would be another traffic light put up on Wilson Avenue. It's my understanding of traffic lights and traffic signs that they're here to regulate the flow of traffic, not to stop the flow of traffic. And I believe that adding any traffic light to that area is going to just increase the problems that we have in rush hour as it is. My concern also is that we need some more clarity as to what the solicitor will be objecting to when the meeting is held in the Ontario district.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers? Okay, thank you. Councillor Pasternak, would you like to clarify?
Yeah, no, thank you very much to the deputants who have come out. You've raised some very important points. Just to reiterate what the speaker, the chair, has said, the motions before us today that we are approving is to fight this development. It is both an unreasonable application and does not lend itself to the neighborhood. Wilson Avenue is already very much in gridlock, and this application here exceeds the avenue study, the mixed-use zone study that it was done back in 2007, I believe. So our position would be to vigorously fight this application. Usually when an applicant sees they're going to lose, they come back to the table and they start negotiating. I'm particularly concerned that incorporated into any application, we want to make sure that there's on-site parkland dedication, that there's a robust Section 37 agreement for community benefits, and that this developer will contribute to the building of a right turn lane eastbound at Bathurst and Wilson. So what are our objectives? To reduce the density, to get them to contribute to local parkland, to make a robust contribution to local recreational and community assets, such as playgrounds, and of course, to contribute to roadway infrastructure improvements, something we've wanted for many years, a right-hand turn lane eastbound on Wilson. So when our hands go up to support this, it is to fight for the neighborhood, I assure you.
Could I ask?
I'm sorry, sir, your time for speaking was up.
I can't ask a question.
No. Thank you.
I'd be happy to talk to you offline, and we'll be, it's not the final word on this proposal. We'll be holding other community meetings.
All right, we have the Councillor Shiner?
Yeah, just a question of the mover of the motion.
Yes.
I understand the height, I understand the long building, I understand the shadowing, I understand the density. Where do you get a right-hand turn lane from this development at Bathurst and Wilson? Is that by the Esso station?
It is. We've been talking to transportation about it for some time, but it requires an expropriation and a moving of utility pole. And we're going to be working on any.
So how does that come into this development, which is a couple of kilometers away?
Well,
not that you may not need it, but
yeah,
I don't understand.
This is
the
something.
relationship.
This will be part of the negotiation. I mean, that's why we're sending legal counsel. But clearly, it's backed up from Bathurst Street up to Champlain, which is where this applicant wants to put a traffic control signal. So it's.
Then the other, is there a staff report that is coming forward to talk about the need for the right turn lane?
We will, that will be part of any application coming forward.
And if not, then I would ask you then simply to go back to transportation and do that study without having to wait for this, because if it's supported and needed, it's something that we can see if we can support anyways without having to get it from this application. I've been stuck in the traffic on Wilson.
I would be happy to have a more formal report request to city staff rather than my musings. Point well taken.
Okay, so the staff recommendations have been moved by the local councillor. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Item 4, Ward 23, we have 3 speakers, Joe Hoffman, Mark Noskowitz, and Danielle Goldstein. Would you please come up to speak? Thank
Hi.
you.
Good morning.
Identify yourself, please.
Danielle Goldstein.
Is the applicant here?
I'm a representative of the
Go ahead.
applicant. Mark and Joe are not in attendance, so it would just be myself speaking. Thank you. Good morning, Council. Thank you very much for your time. My name is Danielle Goldstein, and I am a representative of Lengold Developments Limited, the owner of 286 Finch Avenue West. We were here before Council in November 2017 when planning staff recommended the approval of the application for a zoning bylaw amendment. Staff, in their report, stated that, and I quote, "The proposal represents an appropriate intensification of the site. The proposed stacked townhouses conform to the official plan mixed-use area policies. The built form creates an urban condition and improves streetscape along Brenthal, which provides for an appropriate built form transition from mixed-use area designations to the neighborhoods located to the north of Brenthal Street. The proposed density is appropriate on this site because the development is well served by transit and will be providing appropriate servicing as well as private outdoor amenity in the form of rooftop terraces and patio space located at the rear of the building and on the rooftop. The stacked townhouses have been designed to mitigate impacts of overlook, privacy, and noise and will be compatible with the surrounding area. City planning staff recommends that City Council approve the zoning bylaw amendment application. In November, Councillor Fillion moved without any further explanation other than our project needs more work to defer the decision to today's meeting. My partner and I had met with Councillor Fillion in October 2015 prior to any application being made in order to consult with him. At his suggestion, an application for a zoning bylaw amendment was made in 2016. Since then, there have been 4 rounds of resubmissions, comments, revisions, and meetings between staff and the applicant. It has taken over 2 years for this application to come before Council with staff support. I would like to draw your attention to the city's recently released townhouse guidelines cover page. It is clear that the aesthetics of our proposed elevation is almost identical to that on the cover of the city guidelines. On this side over here is our proposed elevation, and on this side is the cover of the city townhouse guidelines. Furthermore, as evidenced by our submission to staff and staff's recommendation support, Urban Design approves of the proposed elevation. A site plan application has not yet been made, and I am personally here to present an open invitation to Councillor Fillion to meet with the owners during that process for his input and recommendations. It is clear from staff recommendation report and the recommendation by staff before you today to support our appeal that staff is in support of the zoning bylaw amendment. The owners have been actively managing the building, ensuring tenants are happy and taken care of. Some of the neighbors know the owners. The owners care about the neighborhood and want this project to fit in and be the best fit for the community. The owners did not apply for a massive redevelopment of the entire site with extreme density requirements, elimination of rental units, and leaving any tenants homeless. Rather, the proposal is in line with the city's guidelines, which preserves and improves the existing rental housing. All that is being decided at this time is the zoning, and the zoning is clearly appropriate for the site. Before you today is staff's recommendation to support and recommend the city solicitor, together with city staff, to attend the OMB hearings in support of a settlement to the appeal of our application. We respectfully request that council not act against your staff's recommendation and support the appeal of the OMB. Thank you very much for your time.
Do we have any questions? Yes, we do. Councillor Shiner first? No, Councillor Carroll.
Ladies first, I guess. Yes, I'm just wondering, yes, you want us to support staff's recommendations, but staff seem to be asking that a whole lot of Section 37 matters be agreed to if the OMB grants the appeal, that we should also be allowed to secure all these things from you. Why are these not in the agreement of settlement now?
So staff and the applicant have discussed that the zoning be approved in principle by the OMB, and its order, its decision, the enactment of the zoning be withheld until the site plan application is brought forward, and at that time, those details, those conditions can be dealt with. As you're aware, I know that once a zoning bylaw is in place, you're not allowed to amend it for 2 years. So once a site plan application is brought forward, it'll have the ability to deal with those little issues. But at this time, all that's before the OMB is for the zoning to be approved in principle with its enactment withheld, and those Section 37 conditions will be entered into at the time that a site plan application.
You don't have any issues with the
The applicant has no issues with any of the Section 37 conditions that are listed in staff's recommendation report.
Thank you.
Councillor Shiner?
So you referred to the townhouse guidelines cover page, so the picture looks the same. The guidelines are still draft. Or have you reviewed the townhouse guidelines, and do these townhouses conform to the requirements in the draft guidelines?
In conjunction with staff, urban design, city's engineering department, there were 4 rounds of comments, resubmissions, and adjustments to the site and the built form in its entirety to address those issues and any issues that staff brought up, including pedestrian connections, heights and densities, etc., which I believe staff is the expert on what is in that guideline report, and we have come to a satisfactory proposal with staff's recommendation for all those details within the report.
Are there any outstanding issues that the counselor's office has brought to your attention in regard to this that you
Not to my personal attention, no. But I do welcome any aesthetic or design issues that Councillor Fillion may have that be dealt with at the appropriate time during a site plan application process. I personally am here to invite to sit down with you.
Going on longer than I asked, I appreciate that. The short answer was, there's been no other issues that have been brought to your attention that you've been asked to resolve that you're aware of?
Councillor Fillion has not directed any specific issues to me.
To your applicant, or to the applicant through staff?
Not directly.
So you're not aware of any additional issues?
I have an indication there may be an aesthetic issue, but Councillor Fillion has not specifically addressed the applicant.
So what I'm not trying to play words here. I'm just trying to understand what my colleague may have a concern of.
I've been told through other sources that he may have an issue with the aesthetics of the elevation. I have not, I've reached out to Councillor Fillion's office to try to address those, and I'm openly willing to discuss them. I believe so. You can ask him. I would like to know myself.
Have there been any discussions of that with city staff as to the aesthetics of it, or what changes might be able to be made to that to accommodate those concerns?
Throughout the 2-year process, staff has been aware of the elevations as well as the site design, and we have made slight tweaks to that, and there's been no negative feedback to that, is my understanding, and in the report that urban design and staff are on board with the elevation.
And the tweaks to the elevation that you've somewhat heard about, but not directly, what was being asked for?
I don't know. I wasn't told. Okay. I don't know what it is.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Thank you. You may be seated.
Thank you.
Either Joe Hoffman or Mark Noskowitz? No? Anyone else? Okay, Councillor Fillion?
Thank you. Well, just a couple of pertinent facts here. So this is a site that was initially fronting onto Finch, but it's a full block development, so it's an old apartment building that fronts onto Finch that was given the entire block. The far side of it fronts onto a local street with small neighborhood houses across the street. So the important thing with this application, in addition to the to any density or Section 37s related to the existing old building, was how it looks and feels on the local street. At the community meeting, the neighborhood was, I would say, totally against the project. What I have been trying to do is to have it modified so that it fits in with across the street. And that could have happened prior to the staff writing the report, but didn't, and I won't go into that. So when the report hit council, I asked for a deferral, which, thank you, you granted. And had the applicant been willing to work with city staff and myself starting 2 months ago with that deferral, I would guess we would have a resolution of it here now. Instead, they appealed to the Ontario Municipal Board. So once they've appealed to the Ontario Municipal Board, any negotiations will take place through staff, not with me directly. And so I have here, because staff have put a request for directions before us, I'm advised that it's probably best not to defer it again. So so I have a set of recommendations here, which I won't. Francine, can you put them up on the screen? Do I need to read all this out? It's 4 pages long. That was written for me by legal staff, so that it's done correctly. I would have frankly made it simpler wording, but was advised that this was the way to do it, which basically says we're refusing this in its present form, but we're open to discussions to make this look and feel right. A key component of that is the site plan. Now, why they didn't submit a site plan in the first place and why planning staff didn't ask them to submit a site plan earlier, if they didn't, I don't know, because the key issue here is how does this look and feel related to the neighborhood that it's situated on. This fronts onto Brent Hall, which is a local street with houses directly across the street. So site plan is extremely important to the residents surrounding this development, and we need a site plan submission, and we need to work with that to see if we could come up with a solution here. So that, in a nutshell, is what the motion requests.
Madam Chair,
Councillor Shiner?
I'd really like to read it.
We can stand it down while we deal with the next item.
And in the interim,
Yes.
I would like to ask staff some questions.
Staff to the floor, please.
So who's responsible for this application? Who's responsible?
Through you, Madam Chair, can I have the question repeated, please?
Who's responsible for the application of staff? I'm asking you.
For the application?
For review of the application. Who am I asking questions?
The planner responsible is Travis. He's ill today.
Okay. So
It was Pega. She's no longer with the city.
So who's responding?
So would be responsible.
Okay, so my understanding from Councillor Fillion is that he's concerned about the look and feel of the development on the neighboring street to the north. Is that what you understand as well?
Councillor Fillion has certainly indicated to staff that he's not happy with the proposed design. My understanding is that Michael Sakalakis in Urban Design did sit down with the councillor to run through some possible changes that could be made that may satisfy his concerns. So yes, that is my understanding.
So it's generally the It's not the number of units or the height of the units, it's the design of the units on, as it faces the neighboring street to the north?
Not that I'm aware of. I mean, he may also have those concerns, but his principal area of concern, I mean, I don't want to speak for Councillor Fillion, but certainly what he's indicated to me is his principal area of concern being that there is no site plan, so there's no ability to secure the elevations, and he's not satisfied with the aesthetic of the elevations and how they relate. I think it's a compatibility issue, quite frankly.
The motion by Councillor Fillion here, multiple pages, is that, have you read it?
I have not.
Do you believe that we could resolve the issues of the elevations between now and council?
If the applicant is willing to meet with staff, and if we can sit down with Councillor Fillion, it is perhaps possible to resolve these issues.
In a form that if the applicant agrees to it, it could be part of the recommendations in front of the board, so they could be tied down without the site plan?
I'm not sure what the mechanism to secure the plans. I have to defer to my colleagues in city legal. They may have a creative solution. Perhaps it could be secured as a legal convenience in addition in the secretary.
We have a short period between now and council. Maybe city legal through you, Madam Chair, can help me. Councillor Fillion appears to have concerns with the elevations of it and the look and impact on the neighbors to the north. There's no site plan. This has been around for a while. So the question, I guess, to legal is, if there's a will to try and work on both sides, or all three sides, city staff, the councillor's office, and the applicant, to resolve those issues between now and council, can we find a solution, and can we tie it down in recommendations at council?
Thank you for the question, Councillor. The provisions before you intend to secure any changes to the design that are negotiated with the applicant by way of a condition of approval of the zoning, that the zoning can be approved, the decision of the zoning can be approved in principle, subject to the final order being withheld until a site plan agreement is entered into between the applicant and the city, securing the design as negotiated. So the mechanism for securing the design, sir, would be a condition of approval of the zoning.
I understand, but there's a disagreement here. Staff recommendations are to go to the board and say we're satisfied with the development, but we'll look at the design issues after, and the local council would like to look at the design issues for. So that's why I was asking the question, if there is a meeting in advance of the council meeting, and there's some agreement as to how you deal with the design issues, can that be tied down in the first case, most of them, instead of having to wait and go back after?
Again, Councillor, thank you for the question. The mechanism for tying it down at this stage, the zoning stage, would be the same that's in the recommendation, which would mean that if a design could be satisfactorily agreed to between now and council, the recommendations that could go towards council could maintain the same recommendation number 4, which you see before you, which would require that as a condition, an agreed upon condition of the zoning approval, that the final order of the Ontario Municipal Board be withheld until a site plan agreement is entered into securing that design. So the mechanism for securing the design would always be through the site plan agreement.
Okay, can we hold it down, and I'll just go offline and talk with
Okay,
my colleagues?
we can go on to the next item, item 5. Authority to enter into a heritage easement site at 4700 Keel Street, Hoover House at York University. Is there anyone here to speak to this item? No? Motions? Councillor Perruzza? Item 5? Are you moving item 5? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Item 27. Is there anyone here who would like to speak on this item? 426 Glen Grove Avenue.
Hello, I'm Giovanni Tassoni. I'm just asking for a deferral, please, to the next council.
I'm sorry, your name?
Giovanni Tassoni, I'm the
Oh,
applicant.
yes.
I'm just asking for deferral to the next community
Thank
council
you.
meeting.
Thank you. Counselor,
Yeah, I'm just going to move deferral to the next.
all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Item 28.
Madam Speaker, I've spoken to the parties here in the chamber, and I'd
Yes.
just like to move, the speaker doesn't need to speak, so I'd like to move the approval of the application for the proposed Boulevard Cafe.
Where's Sid? Hi, Sid. All right.
He's happy.
Well, as long as Sid's happy.
Yes, very happy.
All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Item 29. 52 Belvedere Avenue. Is that spelled correctly? Really? No speakers? Somebody. You have 5 minutes?
Hello. Thanks for everyone's time today. My name is John Corbin. I'm here with my wife, Kayla Boygon, now Corbin, I guess. We moved into Ward 15 last year at 52 Belvedere Avenue, actually just right before our wedding, so we are now happily wed, I think. At the time of our purchase, we had purchased our home from a renovator, moved into the neighborhood, and there was a parking pad. We later discovered it was unlicensed when it was brought to our attention in a formal manner, which is what brings us here today, of course. We looked into the process and we understood that parking pads are a very contentious issue, obviously, in the city and especially in North York. And so prior to submitting the appeal, we wanted to take the time to speak to our neighbors to understand if there were any concerns and to hear their concerns. So we canvassed the entire street, north and south side, to just speak to them about if they had any issues, and if they did have any issues, to just please communicate them to us, because we are new to the neighborhood and, we want to make friends, of course. And I did attach, and perhaps it was dispersed prior, just a note as well as signatures of support from our neighborhood. We did speak to everybody. We approached every house. Some people were not able to come to the door, and those blanks are representative of those people, be they elderly or just not home on the times that we visited. We received 2 pieces of feedback from our neighbors. The first was that one would like us to plant a tree, which we understand is part of the process should the application be approved. We, of course, have no issue with that. The other individual indicated that he was unhappy with the paving job and stonework that was in place. And we agree. We believe it can be improved. We want the aesthetic to be beautiful on our street, and so we intend to explore those opportunities to us right away should the application be approved. In addition to the positive polling, which we received notice of, like favorable poll results, there were just some observations we made about the street, about our neighbors. Just put together a couple pieces of data. The first is that 71% of our neighbors can park in front of their house, and of the same sample size, 88% can park on a pad or their garage. So currently, we don't have the opportunity to park in front of our house or in our garage based on the narrowness of the laneway between our neighbors. From a safety and accessibility standpoint, currently there are no street permits available on our street. In the winter, less spots, as you can imagine, with the snow that accumulates. And often, many of these spots are taken by visitors who park long after we return home from work. Another note, which is of kind of immediate urgency to me, is that my wife is currently extremely uncomfortably but beautifully pregnant. And a parking pad would not only help with kind of immediate, more convenient access to our home, but certainly improve safety. Safety on Belvedere Avenue is a real concern. Many cars approach on Glenora, Belvedere is a one-way street, and cars often speed down Belvedere the wrong way, down a one-way street to access Oakwood Avenue. And this is a concern shared by all of our neighbors, which really there's just nothing we can do about it beyond just plan accordingly. So we're hoping for not only convenience and accessibility for our growing family, but also as a matter of safety. Just in summary, I just want to say that we understand that in order for the city to work and in order for neighborhoods to work, everyone needs to get along, and everyone needs to work together. And Kayla and I have made a significant investment of time and energy and resources into our neighborhood, be it attending community gatherings, carpooling and such. Just lots of friendly things we can do to make the neighborhood work. And certainly we just want to experience the same benefits that our neighbors do so that we can work together to build a strong community. So thank you very much for your time, and we're happy to address any questions if you have.
Are there any questions? Yes?
Not of the deputy, but of staff. I have
Any questions of the deputy? Yes, Councillor Burnside, try to be helpful.
I'll do my best, thank you. Sorry, you said there was no access into the laneway?
Correct.
Sorry, could you sort of elaborate? I didn't really catch that.
Yeah, so the space in between our and our neighbors' homes is very tight. Perhaps if we had a Fiat or a smart car, maybe we could fit, but in the winter, you definitely cannot access the back of your home, and certainly there's not enough space to even turn around.
But there's a parking spot back there in the yard?
There is not, no.
Oh, there is currently not, okay.
Not in the backyard.
Did you build, this looks like a fairly new home.
It is.
Okay, did you build it?
No. We purchased it from the builders or renovators.
Okay, and did they advise you, or did you realize at the time you built it that parking pad wasn't legal?
No. These aren't questions we knew to ask, obviously, at the time. It's our first home.
But you had an agent, I presume, right?
I'm sorry?
The agent didn't tell you any of that stuff?
We weren't aware
fine,
of the yeah, I'm sorry.
Okay, no problem.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions of the deputy? Denzel? Go ahead.
Along the lines of Councillor Burnside. So this is an infill home, because on Google Street View, it has the building under construction, right? It's an infill?
Yeah, is that still on Google? That's still the picture? Yeah.
What comes up?
Yeah.
So when you bought this house and you saw this driveway squeezed into when you were looking at the place, and you saw the driveway squeezed into this lot, you weren't suspicious that it might not be allowed?
So can you repeat? I'm sorry.
Well, so you bought this house, and there was this driveway just sort of shoehorned in. It kind of looked out of place. You weren't at all suspicious that this might not be allowed?
What might not be allowed? I'm sorry.
Well, the driveway might not be legal.
The laneway?
No,
Sorry.
no. You want to? Did you put the driveway in yourself, or did you when you?
When we purchased the home, there was a mutual driveway to the back.
So you put in the? Did you put in the driveway, the parking pad?
No, we didn't. It was
So the parking pad itself, it was already there,
correct.
and it was kind of. You noticed that it took up a lot of space on your front yard, right? Did it kind of not fit in with all the other? You were not suspicious at all that it might not be allowed?
Well, each of our neighbors has a parking pad, and some of them have two-car parks, so it's actually in line with the entire view of the street.
When you purchased your home, did you have a real estate lawyer?
So bad for me.
When we purchased it, we have a real estate lawyer. Who's our?
Yeah. When we bought the home, they just advised that there's a parking pad. We didn't know to ask if that was a legal parking pad.
And they didn't tell you. They didn't check.
Tell us.
They didn't check.
They didn't check. They didn't tell us. We bought it with a pad, and until we got a notice about it not being legal, we weren't advised as such. So we just bought it with a mutual drive that our cars don't fit through and a pad in the front, and we weren't advised either way, legal or not. We were just told this is a parking pad, and so we parked in it. Like all of our neighbors, our adjacent neighbor directly beside has a double pad as well, and all the other properties on our side also have pads. So we didn't question anything until we got a notice.
Right. Okay.
Are there any other questions? I'm sorry, Councillor Cole.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you. Just a few questions. So this parking pad request does not cause the removal of a tree, is that correct?
Correct.
Correct.
And it doesn't require a curb cut or a ramp?
It would not.
Okay. And your existing mutual drive that you have is too narrow really to get through with the existing space between?
Yes.
Correct.
And generally, it's in keeping with the character and form of other houses in the street, and most of the neighbors support it.
Correct.
Okay, thank you very much.
Are there any other questions? You may be seated, thank you. Are there
Thank you.
questions of staff? No questions of staff. Speakers?
Does the local council want to speak first?
I'll speak
Go ahead.
last.
Sorry, I just had a question on staff. Sorry.
Staff to the floor? Go ahead, Councillor.
Yeah, I just had quick questions of staff. First of all, I understand that this already exists, so it probably it was either complaint-based or staff simply came upon this and found a non-compliant parking pad. Is there a view of the whole street going on? Because the next door neighbor looks pretty paved as well, and front yard fencing and the whole 9 yards.
Exactly right.
Through you, Madam Chair, my name is Nino Pellegrini. I'm with Transportation. I'm the supervisor with the off-street parking, in case none of you know who I am.
Okay, so you wouldn't know how extensively they're looking at the whole street?
Yes, we did receive a complaint on this one, along with the remainder of the street.
Okay. We can't see it because this picture is sort of limited, but is there the curb cut? There's a curb cut for the mutual drive, but then we see beyond it another paved front yard. Is there a curb cut in front of that paved front yard?
No, there's not. The only curb cut is for the mutual driveway itself.
Okay, okay. And is they've used the what I like is permeable surfacing. It's quite popular in some other cities, the honeycomb pattern. Is the recommendation that if approved, that surface should be changed, or can they leave that surface in place?
The turf stone that's there now is actually one of the 3 components that permeable pavers that were actually approved as part of the city specifications back in '96.
Okay, but if we were to approve this, they would end up extending this curb cut?
There's no need for that at the moment.
So they're going to pull up over the mutual drive and then over into the parking pad, even if we were to approve it?
That's correct.
Are there any concerns about later disputes about who did the paving of this mutual drive and who's going to upkeep it? Because there's going to be some wear and tear to it if it is in fact the entry to the paved surface.
This is the way these have been licensed since 1975, I believe.
Yeah.
In former Toronto. Similarly with York.
Yes, yes. Okay. Yes, Councillor Minawong has a better picture, because I recalled this street once before. Okay, so you're okay with them using the mutual drive pavement to get there, even though there's a grade issue and such? Okay. And if there is a dispute over the condition of the pavement, it wouldn't be our concern. It would be up to the neighbors to sort it themselves?
That is correct, Councillor.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Minnan-Wong?
Just one question. I'm not sure you got the answer to this. Was this a complaint generated, or did you find this it was complaint generated? Yes?
This was complaint generated along with a few others on the street.
Oh, so yeah, so I'm looking at the street, and is it on what side of the street? Is it east, west, north, south? North side of the street?
It's on the east, sorry.
Anyway, on that side.
North side.
In that side of the street, they've kind of like, basically, there's no grass on almost that entire side of the street for like this. There are like 4 or 5 houses that basically have very little greenery. Is that fair to say?
That's fair to say.
And then on the other side of the street, it's beautiful. Like it's got nice green lawns, very green lawns, nice plantings. That's the way we want streets to look, right?
Ideally, yes.
And that is fundamentally the reason why we have these bylaws, because we want to make front yards and the front yards of every front yard beautiful, so a neighborhood street looks beautiful and it doesn't look like there's a parking lot going all the way to the front door of a house all the way down the street. Is that right?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Counselor Pasternak, question of staff?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Currently, this street only has 5 spaces that are permittable? Is that page 3 of the report?
There's 5 within the block, but there's actually 6 in total.
And half of them are currently taken? Or?
Sorry, are we referring to parking on the street itself, overnight
Yes.
parking? Yes, that's correct.
Right. Those are annual permits, aren't they?
Renewed every 6 months.
6 months. So half the spots are, well, your report says 5 spaces and 3 permits have been issued for the 5 spaces.
That's correct.
Is one of the permit holders 52 Belvedere Avenue?
No, they're not.
It's not. Okay, thank you.
All right, we're done with the questions of staff? All right, go ahead, Councilor
What's the
Prince.
difference in cost to the homeowner between a on-street permit and a front yard pad?
The on-street permit is roughly close to just under $200 for the year, $190 roughly. For the parking pad is about $260.
Okay, thank you.
I also had a question.
Counselor Robinson?
Yeah, very quickly too. Just to staff generally, are you trying to address, I'm sorry if I missed this earlier, but it was hard to hear. Are you trying to address this as Councilor Deputy Mayor described it, the pavement streets where there's no ability for water to, to be absorbed and therefore it flows into other streets and neighborhoods? Is that being addressed in a broader context?
Not that I'm aware of, other than the bylaw amendments that do come through once in a while in terms of green space components and that.
But there's no inspectors actively out there outside of complaints. It's complaint-driven is my question. Solely complaint-driven?
That's
There's
pretty
no
well.
broader campaign or strategy or?
No, there's a report going to PWIC shortly regarding licensing unlicensed parking pads. We'll have to see what happens with that one.
Okay,
Oh.
we will have to see what happens with that one. Thank you very much.
All right, that's it with the questions. Speakers, please. Go ahead.
In here having a conversation back and forth offline, and I'm refreshed by his very libertarian views with regard to property. I'd like to see that sort of exemplified on the council floor a little bit more often. And the thing is, the inference is that I'm interfering too much in people's enjoyment of private property. However, I don't think so. I think that certain councilors have certain views on this very controversial topic of what we should be doing with front yard parking pads, and I just look at this street and it's like, I don't know. I don't think people really wanted to live on streets that are pretty much all their front yards are paved over. It's not. That's not something that you live in neighborhoods for, and I don't want to interfere in the enjoyment of people's homes. However, I would say this: when it starts to affect other people's homes and the look on look on the street, that's when I think that it's time for us to speak up. And all I'll say is that I just look across the street to what that home could look like, and that's what I'd like to see. You have, a beautifully manicured lawn, lots of grass, and a couple of trees. It's beautiful. And that's what I'd like to see on most streets. Sadly, on the other side of the street, it's all asphalt, and it's not something that I can support. This idea that it's permeable sort of pavement, I don't buy that either, because of the storms that we have. Water can't be absorbed fast enough if there's going to be surcharging in the water system. So I'm happy to move the staff recommendations and deny the application.
All right. Speakers? Yes, Counselor?
I normally actually vote against these parking pads, but this was a new build, and I'm just wondering why we, staff didn't catch this in the first place, our building department. And I think there is some sort of onus on us to take that into consideration. So I actually will be supporting the applicant on this one.
Okay, Counselor.
To speak? Thank you,
Yes.
Madam Chair. As the Deputy Mayor is shocked by my libertarian view, I'm a bit concerned with the strong arm and reach of government getting into private property rights by our Deputy Mayor. Some of his new friends and colleagues might be upset with that. I'm going to move the alternate recommendations. I think the facts here are clear. There's no tree removal. Actually, they're going to add a tree. It's a permeable surface. It doesn't take away any parking because there's an existing curb cut and ramp. The street supports it. They've got a permeable surface that's better than the neighbors that we've been shown that aren't here before us today. So it's improving the look of the street. I don't think we're here to govern the aesthetics of streets and private property. I think we have to decide, and I know many people have opinions on whether we should have front yard parking or not. The one suggestion is always about permeable surface and basement flooding. Well, this is the old city of York, where there's a lot of front yard parking, and actually it's not an area where we experience basement flooding. Where I experience basement flooding in my ward is the more suburban settings, like many of the councillors in this chamber, where if you have a 2, 3, 4, 5 car driveway, then you can have as much paved as you want. You can probably pave your whole backyard, put a pool in there too, and have 10 times the amount of paved service that some of these tiny lots do in the old city of York. Yet we have no issue with that, no policy for that, no provisions for that to combat the impact of basement flooding. And in fact, there are city reports that my colleague, Councillor Carmichael Greb, has brought to my attention that says that front yard parking pad is actually a minuscule contributor to basement flooding in the city of Toronto. And what the bigger contributor is the expansive amount of property that's paved in many suburban neighborhoods and streets that doesn't come in front of us for appeal or for approval. So I am going to move the alternate recommendations. I think it's a vast improvement to the street. It helps add greenery and it helps with basement flooding. Thank you, Madam Chair. It improves what's there now.
Okay. Counselor Carroll?
I just, as a person who has one of those luxurious wards with lots of driveways, I just do want to, I think the councillor in his passion has forgotten that we do have policy for those lots as well. There is a limit to how much you can pave a front yard, even in a 70-foot frontage lot in my area, such that we actually run up and down our street, all of us getting to know the snowbirders, because there's actually a limit to how many cars you're supposed to park in your driveway, unless someone's, and so lest someone start complaining about numbers of kids home from college with cars, we actually redistribute our cars onto snowbirders' driveways in the winters and make sure everybody's covered and there is fewer cars, because there actually is policy. And while it is probably less stringent because the communities were designed a different way, I'll be supporting Councillor Min Wong's motion.
Okay. All right, we're ready to vote. Councillor Cole's motion goes first, which is an amendment to the staff recommendation. All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Against? 1, 2, 3. Councillor Fillion, you didn't vote. 4. Okay, so it carries, which makes Councillor Min Wong's motion redundant. Okay? Next item. Item 30. I understand there is no one here to speak to this item on Grand Ravine Drive? No one's registered with the clerk? Councillor, would you like to move a motion? Councillor, stop talking, move a motion.
Move the staff recommendation.
God.
I'm happy to move the recommendation, recommendation 2 with the condition. So I believe the simple condition is, oh, the 3-0, which one?
Okay, so the local counselor is moving the staff
No,
report?
no, hold on. No, 30, the local counselor is not going to move that motion.
The staff report, yes, you are.
No, I'm not going to move that, on number 30, I'm not moving that motion, Madam Speaker, absolutely not.
Anthony, I think you're wrong.
I am wrong. No, so let me say it a little more clearly, Madam Chair. On NY 2730, application to remove a private tree at 168 Grand Ravine Drive, the local councillor, will not be moving the staff recommendation at all. I'm not moving that report. If someone else wants to
Okay.
take that initiative on,
Okay,
and
Councillor
Councillor
Carroll is moving the staff recommendation. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you.
No, count. No, you have to count. We have to add that.
I'm sorry? Oh, all in favor of Councillor Carroll's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Opposed? 1, 2, 3. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
31. Councillor Cole, do you have someone here to speak to this item?
I think so.
Yes, sir? Go ahead.
Thank you, councillors, for listening to my concerns today. My name is Jonathan Mandel. I applied to the city's urban forestry department to remove a city-owned tree on the front of my property, as I believe the tree is in poor health. The tree in question is situated on the city-owned right-of-way, and therefore it is the city's legal right to decide the fate of this tree. Urban Forestry has denied my application to remove the tree, and I do not challenge Urban Forestry's decision. I do, however, challenge the process that I had to go through in order to reach this decision. The existing process is unnecessarily costly for homeowners and lacks in both fairness and transparency. Let's start by looking at the costs. The existing process requires homeowners to pay an application fee of $313. An arborist report at a cost of $395 in my case must also be submitted by the homeowner in order to proceed with the application. I spent a total of $708 simply to get an answer as to whether I would be permitted to remove the tree in question. I asked this committee to seriously consider whether requiring a private arborist report is necessary in this process. According to Urban Forestry, an arborist report is, quote, a technical report that identifies the location, species, size, and condition of trees and describes maintenance strategies and protection measures to be implemented. This basic information contained in the arborist report helps facilitate our review. In general, the observations made by the private arborist should align with the observations of city staff. In some cases, the weight of severity placed on observed tree characteristics differs between the city and the property owner or their arborist, end quote. Urban Forestry already has on file the location, species, size, and condition of every city tree. That is Urban Forestry's job to maintain this database. There are no maintenance strategies or protection measures to be implemented for this type of application, as I was asking to remove the tree. Urban Forestry acknowledges that there can be discrepancies that occur between the homeowner's arborist report and Urban Forestry's own inspection of the tree. But what happens in this case? In my experience, Urban Forestry accepts its own findings as fact without regard for the homeowner's arborist report. According to Urban Forestry's own words, they do not trust the findings of private arborist reports, and I quote, the arboricultural industry is the most common provider of evidence in the form of applications, arborist reports and tree protection plans. The arboriculture industry is not regulated. This lack of industry regulation highlights the need for staff oversight, as is the current process when tree bylaw applications are made. Such oversight ensures that applicants are dealt with in an objective and consistent manner in alignment with city policies, end quote. In my case, my arborist found 3 items contributing negatively to the overall health of the tree, which you can find in my arborist report. The missing top leader and overall lean of the tree, the presence of bark beetles, and the presence of spruce tip gall. Urban Forestry inspected the tree by a certified arborist and disagreed with not one or two, but all three of my arborist findings. My arborist report was performed by someone with the same qualifications as the inspector from Urban Forestry, yet none of my arborist findings were given any validity in Urban Forestry's decision-making. I agree that arborist reporting can be subjective, and it is true that there is no real governing body for arborists. If Urban Forestry does not trust the findings of private arborists due to the lack of regulation and consistency, then why do they require a report that they inherently distrust? I would have been happy to pay the application fee and have the city inspect the tree and make a determination on its own. After all, it is solely the city's right to assess and make decisions about the tree. It doesn't matter what my arborist report says. It only matters what the city thinks of the tree, because the city has the right to overrule anything that my arborist report says without question. Moving on to the issue of transparency. I paid $700 and filled out an application, and in response, all I got back from Urban Forestry in an email is this tree is healthy and your request is denied, with no further explanation. I'm sorry, but that is not acceptable. Today, you are the judge and jury. In light of my experience, I ask you to consider whether this process is fair. Is the homeowner's arborist report really necessary? What specifically does the city require from this expensive report that it does not produce on its own, with the information existing in Urban Forestry's database and through its own inspection of the tree in question? I'm asking all of you today to make this right by reimbursing my arborist report fees and by reviewing this process to better serve taxpayers in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions? Councillor Carmichael Greb?
How did you find your arborist?
I did an internet search.
And it was like you checked like reviews, reputable arborist?
Yeah, he's appeared before the Ontario Municipal Board. He sent me his resume and qualifications.
And did you ask him to write a report that says to take the tree down?
He knew that was my intention, yes.
But he wrote it based on evidence, not what you asked him to do?
He wrote it based on evidence, and it was clear that my intention was to remove the tree and replace it with a healthy tree.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Burnside is next.
Thank you. Is it possible that the intent of having a private arborist look at this is to narrow down the scope of concern?
Sorry, I didn't see that.
So meaning that if you don't have your in this case your arborist saying, hey, these are the 3 areas, you could be coming to community council and there could be 20 things, and then it's a bit of a back and forth. Do you not think that maybe you coming with your concerns, the city then responding to those concerns, and then having community council decide, do you not think that that might actually streamline the process? Whether you like it or the answer or not, does that not kind of streamline it?
It's at a great expense to taxpayers, and the city is already sitting with information about the health of that tree. The city is starting with a baseline of that tree. So for the city to go and to drive by with an arborist, a city arborist, in order to inspect that tree, they would already have an idea of the issues going on with that tree, more even than my private arborist who's looking at that tree for the first time.
Right, but do you not think if we just said we're looking at our own city staff report, that people might be upset that they didn't have a chance to bring their own arborist in? And then if you bring your own arborist in, it's a back and forth and it's a deferral and then it's a whole. You don't see that maybe?
Personally, I look. It's city property. Whether you get to make the criteria, you get to make the decisions. So whatever the city says is what goes. So why bother with my report? Why don't I pay my application fee, which is over $300? That should pay for what, 10, 12 work hours from Urban Forestry at $30 an hour, whatever they make, I don't know, but it should pay for a full day's work for somebody from City Forestry to look at that tree, produce a report. And I mentioned transparency also. That report should be provided to the homeowners, that instead of just saying no, there should be some further backup as to why there's been given an answer of no or yes, either way. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, a couple of questions about the site, but just to follow up on Councillor Robinson's questions, because I remember way back in the late 50s when we put this policy in place. I was in council at that time, and we talked about this, the dilemma with city-owned trees. But it came down to this, and I wonder if I could ask you what your reaction would be. So if we had a policy that said, if you want to have a city-owned tree removed, we just have the city arborist come and evaluate it, but we needed to have an appeals mechanism. A city arborist would come and evaluate the tree, and if you didn't like the decision and you wanted to take action against us, what would you do?
Well, I don't feel that the appeals process is working as it is right now.
Right, but the dilemma was, if we didn't ask you to require that report and you wanted to appeal our arborist report, you'd pretty much have to call an arborist anyway.
True. If I wanted to appeal, yeah.
Yeah. So it's a matter of where you call in the arborist. Requiring you to do it up front is really just requiring up front a step that you're likely going to take if you disagree with us anyway. Do you see what I mean?
But not necessarily.
Remove it, but many applicants might still end up having to incur the expense. That was what came up in the development of the policy.
I understand what you're saying, but it's completely without input from me or my arborist or anybody else. It's the city's decision about that tree. Even if there is an appeal, even if I bring an arborist who says X, Y, and Z, it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, the city gets to make the final decision. The appeal itself is irrelevant.
Okay. And just a couple of questions, having read the report, but I have a couple of questions looking at the site. There's signs of construction at the front of the house, but just at the entrance. Is there a project ongoing there, or that's just what was happening?
It's a completed project at this point.
Oh, it is complete. Yep. Okay, that's what I was wondering. So there's not going to be any change to the driveway in the near future?
No.
And there are a couple of trees. There's a site that says for sale in the neighboring lot, and a couple of trees that look like they're in the same position. So maybe these trees got there because they were sort of planted at the beginning of the subdivision, all in a row. Is that
it's
possible?
The two trees to the east that you're referring to are actually a different species, and I'm not sure if they were planted at the same time. I mean, there are a number of characteristics that I could point out from my arborist report to support the unhealthy claim.
You're in the report, yeah.
Yeah, but I don't feel that that it's going to make a difference. You know, I think the city's looked at the tree with their arborist, made a, you know, urban forestry's made a decision, and that's my point. I'm not challenging that part of it. I'm challenging the fact that I had to produce an arborist report, but when I produced that report, it wasn't taken into account, and it wasn't given any validity, and it was $400 out of my pocket for no reason at all. Urban forestry would have made exactly the same decision without my report.
I see. Okay.
That's my position.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You may be seated.
Sorry, Madam Chair, I have a question.
Oh, you do? Okay,
Yeah.
sorry. Councillor Shiner?
It's Jonathan, is it?
Yes.
So Jonathan, you were doing a renovation to the home at the time,
Yeah, to the front mudroom, yeah.
Okay. And the tree itself then is a large tree that's shadowing the front, and if I understand it right, it's dropping its cones and its stuff in the front of the house, so that's really why you wanted to get it out of there?
That's not a concern, so much the dropping of the cones. I mean, there is an aesthetic concern with this tree. It's also, it hasn't grown as much as it should have. It had its top leader cut off by urban forestry because the top leader had died.
Okay, well, so you called an arborist and you had him come out. Most of the arborists are experienced in what it takes to have a tree removed, you know, from the city?
Yes.
So in your first discussion with him, did you ask him what he thought your likelihood was to be able to gain support for the city to remove the tree?
He said it would be an uphill battle.
So you knew coming in that he was basically telling you the tree wasn't unhealthy and it might be difficult to get city support to remove it?
Yes, but it was still a requirement of the application to include if I wanted to get an answer, I still had to fill out the application and submit an arborist report.
So he didn't offer, nor did you try to contact anybody in urban forestry, or did you?
I don't recall.
Okay, so you didn't have a direct contact. The only real contact was getting the form, filling out the application, getting an arborist in, who said it's probably an uphill battle, and after you paid all the money, getting a no. And that's what your concern is?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Sir, you mentioned in your private arborist report that we mandate that you get. What was the issues they identified with the tree? You mentioned 2 invasive species that were.
I believe a copy of the report was provided to everyone, but if not, I'll run through it with you. The main issues with the tree, you can see from the Google map view actually, is that there is a lean to the tree, which is visible. So that combined with the fact that the top leader was dead and previously removed by urban forestry creates a situation when a tree doesn't have a top leader. The tree sprouts from various different points at the top of the tree, creating a top-heavy situation whereby there is potential in combination with the lean that the tree could fall and cause damage or harm. The second issue was the arborist took close-up pictures. Actually, my arborist took close-up pictures of bark beetle infestation, which urban forestry said doesn't exist, but there's a clear discrepancy between the 2 arborists. And thirdly, my arborist found evidence of spruce tip gall, which is another disease for this type of tree.
So bark beetle and spruce tip gall.
Tip gall, yes.
Okay, I'll ask staff about that. My other question is, obviously the frustration of it, what seems to be a pointless process of an arborist report if it then gets overruled. Would it surprise you to know that 99.9% of these appeals or applications, once they arrive at City Council, regardless of what happens here, are almost all denied?
That does not surprise me.
Okay, thank you.
We'll go into speakers now. You may be seated, sir.
Questions to staff?
Okay. Staff to the floor. Denzel, was yours a question of staff?
I have a question, yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Is the application fee $300? No, I'm staff's here. Is the application fee $300?
It's a little more than $300.
Oh, well, that's encouraging. So if I put in an application, what do I get for my $300?
That would include a review of your application. It's an application processing fee, so staff would review the information that's provided, including the arborist report, any other correspondence from the applicant, plans, site plans, if they're included, and staff will go and inspect the site to verify the information in the report, and to, get a better idea of what the application is about. It also includes correspondence between ourselves and the applicant in preparation of any reports on appeal, memos to community councilors.
Right. Okay, so just to break that down a little bit, how much, do you review these yourself? Do you review these applications yourself?
Generally, non-construction applications and even small development applications are reviewed by our assistant planners. So they're arborists or foresters in that job classification. Typically, I would get involved when it gets to appeal to community council or any files that may become contentious or there's issues that arise.
So I'm thinking, to look at an application and look at all the paperwork, it couldn't take more than like an hour.
Some files are quite complex, so it does take time to review the materials that are submitted, go out to the site, have discussions with arborists, with the applicants. So there is a fair amount of time that is involved in the majority of these applications.
So how much time do you spend, how much time would a person spend on a file, not exclusive of going out for a site visit? It's because I'm looking at the report, and clearly part of the report that was written is boilerplated. I mean, I could point to the sections. how much time would you spend, like, when you get it, receiving an application? Would it take more than an hour to review it?
Many of them would take more than an hour to review it,
How
depending
long?
on what is included in
long?
the application.
The average file, how long do you spend doing the paperwork, looking at an application?
I would say with the paperwork, maybe 2 hours.
And so, and an inspection, what, another hour or so going out for the day, a couple hours?
Depending on the location from our office.
Right. So about 4 hours then?
That would be a rough estimate, I would say.
And they get charged how much?
It's a little more than $300.
What, do you know what the exact amount is?
It's $313.99.
All right, so they're charged about 70 bucks an hour, a little 75, 78?
78, 25.
About 80 bucks an hour. Yeah, okay. Very good, thank you.
Are there any other questions? Councillor Cole?
Yeah, I just have questions about the issue around the bark beetle and spruce tip gall and what the impact of that is on a tree.
It depends on the level of infestation. So if you have a large infestation, it can cause dieback and decline. Like with bark beetles that are having an impact on the cambium of the tree and affecting the way that the tree uptakes water and nutrients, it can have an impact. If it's a small infestation and the tree is healthy, it may have no impact at all. The same for diseases that affect the foliage of the tree. Typically, those are seasonal and don't have a long-term effect on the tree.
So is the kind of the analysis or suggestion here that while this may exist, the infestation is not severe enough to threaten the health of the tree?
When our inspector went out to the site, she didn't observe evidence of the bark beetles. I know in the arborist report there's some evidence of holes, but it's not conclusive that it was the bark beetle that was mentioned in the arborist report. We didn't see evidence of the damage to the foliage, and in the arborist report that was provided by the applicant, it was just mentioned that it may be causing that dieback.
So in this instance, there might be a disagreement between arborist assessments between the one provided by the homeowner and our staff?
Yes, in this case, I say there would be, in terms of the evidence that we saw or the extent to which that evidence is there and the impact that it's having to the tree currently in terms of the health and structure of the tree.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair.
Councillor Shiner?
Can you tell me who the arborist was that went out on behalf of the applicant?
His name is Trevor Whiteside from Whiteside Tree and Garden Incorporated.
Have you had experience with this firm before?
Yeah, I would say this arborist does provide a fair number of arborist reports. I have seen his reports in the past.
So he would be well experienced in tree removal in the city?
I would say, yes, he's familiar with our process.
So looking at a tree like that, if he was giving advice, which I think he said that the deputy said as well, he might have looked at it and said it might be difficult to because he's experienced. He's looking at the tree. I've dealt with him myself. Not this gentleman.
I would say he'd be able to draw from his experiences with similar applications that he's submitted with the city and have a good idea of how it would proceed from there.
Now, if I want to have a tree removed and I call someone to my house and he's shedding doubt on my ability to get it out, can I also call forestry and speak with city staff and have them take a look and tell me?
Can you repeat?
Well, I have a tree in front of my house and I have concern that maybe it'll come out. The application tells you what to do to apply, but it also gives you contact information for forestry. So if I'm a homeowner and I'm there and I contacted you, what kind of advice can you give me, and would someone actually know the condition of the tree or give me some advice whether it be worthwhile going forward with the application?
Yeah, definitely. So number one, the city has a basic inventory that's available for all city assets that's updated at the last point at which the city goes to undertake maintenance. So generally, the preliminary information available to us is a time of last inspection and a very general condition rating, good, fair, poor, or hazardous. So it does require an inspection by staff to go out and, get a better idea of what potential, to expand on that condition of the tree. Like what, you know,
But it's so, but if I'm there and I don't want to go ahead and hire an arborist to make the application, I simply want to phone up and say, look, I've got this problem, sappy tree seems to be leaning, I've got some problems, the branches are falling off of it, can I call you and you'll give me advice and even possibly come out and look at the tree?
yeah, staff will respond to those. We do get inquiries, you know, every day.
Okay.
Of people about trees, you know, what's wrong with my tree, you know, what's the application process? Can somebody go out and look at the tree? If it's a city tree, we would definitely recommend, if somebody is saying, I want to remove this tree, I'm concerned about the health and condition, we would recommend they call 311 for forestry operations to go and inspect their tree for routine removal or routine maintenance.
And does that cost anything?
No, it doesn't.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Shiner. Councillor Carmichael Greb, questions for staff?
Why do we require an arborist report if the arborist goes out anyway?
Well, primarily, the first reason is that the city tree bylaw, Article 2, requires that as part of a complete application. So we are required to, you know, have an arborist report submitted. Secondly, it does help facilitate our review by giving us information that's up to date about the tree in terms of condition. You know, it allows us to have a conversation with the applicant, who's typically an arborist, to be able to discuss issues with the tree, professional to professional.
But would that not be included in the arborist report, the up-to-date health of the tree? Isn't that what the arborist is going out there to do?
The arborist that's providing the arborist that's providing the arborist report for the property owner is providing an up-to-date assessment and trying to take that in combination with the property owner's concerns about the trees and provide a report so that it helps facilitate our review. When we're talking about tree condition, issues with the tree, it is easier for us to speak to another professional in the tree industry. When we're talking about tree diseases or observed defects in a tree, you know, we may have disagreements in terms of severity, but city staff speaking with a professional, you know, private arborist, you know, is typically easier to get those issues understood.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. No other questioners? We'll go into speakers. Councillor Minnan-Wong is first.
Yeah, so firstly, well, I want to thank the deputy for coming, for actually making us have this level of discussion. It got me thinking about especially the services and fees that they provide. My fundamental view is we should be charging you cost recovery, and that's it. Government, we shouldn't be taking the money. Governments far too often charge a fee, and they use it to backfill other programs, and that's not right. It's an extra service outside your property taxes, therefore you should pay for it, but only as much as, you know, the services. You should only buy the amount of services that you need, and we shouldn't be charging. $80 an hour seems to be excessive. And the good news is I'm sympathetic to, you know, your arguments. The bad news is I think you're done. I mean, I don't think this, you're right. You're not going to, as Councillor Cole said, 99% of these applications, the council down there, they don't care. They just there are some sanctimonious councillors that don't care about your personal circumstances. And so it doesn't matter how we vote today. You know, if I put money down, that doesn't matter what we say or what we do, your tree's going to continue. They're not going to let you take down your tree. And so I'm sorry for you in that regard. My view is if it's a choice between people and trees, people always should come first, right? But the folks downtown, they don't. Some of them don't feel that way, and they just kind of look at a tree and I don't know. They just come up with a different an insensitive, unthoughtful answer that doesn't really.
Well, thank you for coming, Denzel.
No, I'm allowed to say that.
Yes, and I thanked you.
Unthoughtful answer that doesn't sometimes reflect the needs of residents. I'll just say that, you know, we had another matter that was here just a couple councils ago, where there was someone who was allergic and was getting, you know, infections and swellings, living in a townhouse, and one particular councillor, which I was like quite surprised, with. One of the answers, comments was, they said, move from your townhouse. Go find another townhouse. So when it comes to a choice between, you know, how hard it is to like get up and move from your house, yeah, so that tree can live. That's the type of environment that you're having to deal with, residents of the City of Toronto have to deal with. I'm very sympathetic, but, you know,
I'm sad we can't all be more like you.
Okay.
I'm sorry that that's the way it is, and thank you for coming.
Okay. Shelley Carroll is next, and then John Burnside.
Okay, thank you, Madam Speaker. My votes are pretty consistent. People know that I will be supporting denying the tree removal. But I just had to, I wasn't even going to speak at all, but I have to comment so that the resident understands fees. This is a department where doing this work is now total cost recovery. And that's why, yeah, it's about $80 an hour to pay to have professional arborists of our own, to pay for them to have offices, to pay to run that department, and it's a total cost recovery department. We could instead universally bill everyone and tax them and remove some of the burden of cost here. But if you've decided that you're going to stagnate taxes and make more and more and more departments total cost recovery, then the isolated person who makes use of that service can no longer avail themselves of the universal sharing of cost of all the residents. That's a funding model that we have moved to in the last 8 years, and this is the reality and the outcome of it. I'm sorry for that. It's not something that I voted in favor of, these 8 years, but that is the outcome of moving to that sort of funding model. I think people would much rather be universally taxed and make sure that these things can happen without really dinging someone, when we also have policy that says that on top of whatever is the total cost recovery of running our department, they're going to be asked to incur a private expense. That's something we ought to have taken into account before we moved to a total cost recovery model. Because another word for total cost recovery model is user pays. The one individual user has ended up paying for something we could all collectively do because we all collectively care about the city's tree canopy. Those are my comments, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Councillor Burnside?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just want to set a few issues straight here. In terms of, I actually agree with what Councillor Cole said. The biggest issue here is that whatever we decide ultimately goes down to City Hall, and 99.9% of the time is to preserve the tree, no matter what the evidence is one way or the other. To me, that's the issue. But just a little bit of context. I really don't think we're dinging anyone here. $313. I think Councillor Minwong figured out to be $78 an hour. That's about $60 an hour plus benefits. You have to pay for someone to drive out there. There's a cost of the vehicle. If you could get a plumber to come out for $60 an hour, please let me know where I could find the plumber, the electrician, or someone that will just nail my eaves and fix my eaves. So, you know, it's great to say these things to people and be all outraged about $313. I think that outrage is totally misplaced. I do understand the deputant's plight, but my real frustration is the fact that whatever we decide here ultimately doesn't matter.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I would take exception to Councillor Menwong's comments about the fees. In order to keep property taxes at or below the rate of inflation, we need to raise funds on a cost recovery basis for the various services that we offer. If you start going into the private sector for the various home services that Councillor Burnside listed, you would be paying well over that. We have had certainly our share of plumbers and electricians and tree removal services at the house that my family lives in, and I can tell you that $300 to bring an experienced staff member over to write a report is a bargain. We may not like paying, but in the marketplace it represents value. That being said, I'm going to go with the local councillor decides if he moves a motion to approve the removal of the tree, I will certainly support it. We must respect private property. We must respect the quiet enjoyment of one's home. And the staff report here, and this is no disrespect to the homeowner, stating with proper care and maintenance, this tree has the potential to provide the property owner and surrounding community with benefits for many years to come. This tree, based on the picture in front of us, is highly unlikely that this tree will be properly cared for and maintained. It's no insult to the homeowner, but certainly I respect his wish to remove this tree, and I think it is unfortunate that our colleagues at City Council who do not read these staff reports, who do not attend these meetings and listen to deputants, unilaterally and arbitrarily reverse our decisions to remove, which is an unfortunate occurrence. Anyway, I wait to hear from the local councillor and what he decides to do, and we'll vote accordingly.
Yes? No, not now. Councillor Perruzza is next.
Thank you, Speaker. So I sit here like everyone else, month after month, and we get lots and lots of these tree removal requests. We get lots of them here at North York, in Etobicoke, in Scarborough, and everywhere else. There is a tree everywhere that is a nuisance to someone. That's a fact. This one's got a bug in it, it's leaning, it's top heavy, there's a worry it's going to fall down, and that may happen, I don't know. You know, what the overall health of the tree is. And we look at the merits of each and every one, and then we make a decision based on that. The reality is that if we followed Councillor Min Wong's suggestion, we would just simply be issuing permits to cut down hundreds and hundreds of mature trees each and every month. That's what we would be doing. If we just simply said, we care more about people, less about the environment. We care more about people, less about trees. We care more about people, less about our canopy. We care more about, you know, a tree request that came in a little earlier. The tree was rescued from a construction site some 45 years ago by Mrs. Miller. She rescued this little tree. She planted it on her property. Right? The tree grew big. Now it's a tree that produces a particular type of sap. So that sap sort of, you know, falls, and it gets stuck to your shoe, and sometimes you drag it into your home. Now it's a nuisance. It was their tree. They planted it, cultivated it, watched it grow for 40 years. Now, yes, it's a nuisance. If the tree survives this particular person's nuisance, it may be enjoyed for hundreds more years by many, many folks who will occupy that property, who will live there. That may very well happen. That tree that provides shade, that tree that you know, oxygen, that tree that swallows, you know, carbon, right, is someone's nuisance today. But it's such a big benefit to so many other people. So the question is, if we cared, because some people just simply care, I don't know what that means, but it means something to someone, about people, a little less about trees, then we'd willy-nilly cut down hundreds and hundreds of trees each and every month, issuing permits to cut down a tree that is a nuisance to someone. It's either going to fall down, it's sprinkling leaves into their eaves troughs, it's growing roots into their sewers, its roots are coming into their foundations, it's too close to the driveway, and on and on and on. I have an allergic reaction to it. I get sick every time I look at the tree, and so on and so forth. Lots of good reasons, lots and lots of good reasons to cut down lots and lots and lots of trees. But at some point, we sort of have to, weigh in and say to yourself, okay, how much do we care here, and what is it that we care about more than this other?
Thank you so much, Counselor.
Well, I just thought I'd chime in on that one, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very moving.
Counselor Shiner, aren't you glad you waited?
Well, sometimes counselors can be nuisances to others too sometimes, but I'll try not to be. Madam Speaker, the issue that was brought forward by the deputant today was the process that we go through for tree removal, and he felt it was unfair. He felt spending $300 with the city to look at it and $400 himself wasn't right. I asked staff the question, what happens when you go through a review? And they said quite clearly, call us. We'll take a look at the tree. We'll give you an idea of what we think of the tree to begin with. There's no fee for that. No one made the outreach. Onto the internet, looked for someone with credentials to look at a tree and give them an assessment of, who came out and said, highly unlikely you're going to get this out. Because I've been there. I've worked with people and had to have trees removed. First thing the arborist will come out is, if the city doesn't, and say, that's going to be a tough one. And what did he find? He found a little bit of lost its central leader, maybe because it had spruce tip gall at one time. I'm not a technical person. Staff said they didn't find that, and it had a little bit of beetles or some bugs. But the bottom line is, even he said it was a tree that was in fair condition. So, my concern is where this, excuse me, my colleagues for a minute. My concern is where this has gone. This is not an unusual circumstance. You have a tree, you don't like it, you can phone the city because it says it right online. There's contact numbers, we just look, there's email. You can say, I've got this tree, what do you think? They'll tell you the process, they'll come have a look. That's what it is. And if the city doesn't think it should come out, it's up to us to see if there's a reason to allow it out or not. That's also the process. But to do that, there's an assessment on both sides. So, $300 for the city's work, $400 for the arborist alone to come out for an hour. So I don't want to start hearing about how we're overcharging. I really think that our staff in urban forestry do a good job. I think they care about the trees that are out there. They go and take a fair look at them. They give people good advice in it. But if you think that you want that tree out, you still have a process to do so, which is what happened here. You take the process, you bring out a professional, he'll also tell you, not likely. And I don't like the fact that it has gone down the line to disparage our staff as to the work that they do. No disrespect, Madam Chair. They did the job that was right. Nobody asked them, nobody contacted them. $400 for an independent person. We're talking about how much our staff get, $300 for the fee? That's not an excessive fee to review an application to have something done and for the services that we provide. And even in the report that's here, our staff said what they saw was minor, wasn't much, and the bottom line is the tree isn't failing. The tree is not unlike many other trees in the city, fair condition. If you want to remove every tree that's in, quote, fair condition in the city, you're going to lose half your canopy. You have trees down the street, take a look, the side of the bark is split, it's falling, branches are falling off. We have a lot of trees that are going to have to be replaced over the years, and they fail and we take them out. So staff did the job right, the fee is fair, the applicant did what he thought was appropriate, no disrespect to him, he went through a process, he took a shot. He put his money down and tried to gamble to see if it would come out against all the advice that it probably wouldn't, and it didn't win. Not on this one, and no reason for it. It's a sticky tree, it's got some problems, but we didn't do anything wrong in the city. We did everything right, and I don't really like saying staff are too expensive, or we're charging too much, or it's not cost recovery, or we haven't done our job right. From everything I heard on this one, city forestry did the proper job on this, looked at the tree, and responded to us, and everything was followed that was proper on it, and we offer additional services if they wanted. Nobody took the advice that was given to them that this tree most likely isn't going to come out. Nobody has a report to me that says the tree is dangerous, it's failing, it's in bad condition. It's not here. So I don't know what the whole debate is about. We did a good job, staff did a good job, we charged a fair fee. Council wants to recommend it out, that's council's choice.
Are there any further speakers? Councillor Cole.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We certainly love to talk about trees at Toronto City Council, and I think the suggestion that hundreds of trees will be coming down just isn't backed up by facts. We have 4 requests in front of us this community council meeting. Sometimes we have 1, sometimes we have none. So there's not the deluge of people trying to cut down the tens of thousands of trees in the city of Toronto. It's just, and even at City Council, when we get the amalgamation of all those requests from all 4 community council districts, it's still probably in the single digits. But I don't want to get into the whole tree debate, generally in city policy. I do want to thank the deputy for bringing up some process questions and issues that I think are important ones for us to discuss. And obviously it resonated with councillors around this chamber because we have been discussing it for the better part of an hour. And I wonder, and I'm worried, have we created a bit of a cottage industry out there in private arborists that really isn't advancing any of the process at all, because the end result is always the same, both in the city staff review and in the council decision. And so that's something that may need further assessment. The other thing that's interesting is earlier today, we all voted to cut down many mature trees that an employer said their employees enjoy throughout the day and use for shade. And outside of, I know Councillor Shiner asked some questions and had some concerns about it, but really we had no issue with those dozen mature trees being cut down. And the one main one that he discussed is in much better health than the one that's in front of us here. So I think for residents, when they see with the development application that there's no discussion or question about a tree being removed or that it's just cut down like that, yet at the same time with the tree on their property that's and many times owned by the city, they see this process play out, it just doesn't balance. And so I can understand people's frustration with the process generally. So I'll move the alternate recommendation. I'll say to the resident, I think Councillor Min Wong kind of gave you the truth of what will happen at City Council. But also I'd say if cost is a concern too, be careful what you wish for, because even the alternate recommendation of someone able to get a tree removed, you'd still pay your arborist fee, city application fee, in this case $1,800, which is the appraised value, and you have to provide 5 replacement trees. So if cost is a concern or an issue, then tree removal may not be the answer that some want, but I will move that alternate recommendation.
Okay, we have the local councillor's motion for the alternate recommendation. All in favor? Opposed? It carries. Thank you. Councillor Cole, would you like to move a motion to continue, to finish the agenda?
I'll move that we continue, or do I have to move the?
That we continue, that we finish the agenda.
I'll move a motion to continue to finish the agenda.
All in favor? Opposed? Carried?
Madam Chair,
Could I also, yes?
I had held 27.4, Councillor Fillions.
Oh, yes. Could I have I need to reopen an item. I need a 2/3 vote to reopen. This is with reference to the item that I spoke about at the beginning of the meeting.
You have to tell us what we're voting on. Like, what are we reopening, which item?
We voted on a reopening earlier.
Yes, at the beginning of the meeting, I explained why I was late. I explained that I went to a local school. It's the local school, St. Raphael's.
What item are we reopening?
The parking prohibitions on Ian Hall Road.
Thank you.
Thank you. Could I need a 2/3 vote. All in favor? Okay, thank you. So it'll be distributed.
Madam Chair, could I move point 10, 27.10?
Councillor Shiner wants to move his first. Go ahead.
Okay.
So, through you, Madam Chair, I held the motion from Councillor Fillion 27.4. I've had an opportunity to hear from planning staff and our legal staff. I am prepared to support the motion that Councillor Fillion has. What it does is it is requiring more definition as to what's actually going to be built on the site besides just the zoning. The issue that we have in front of us is not the appropriateness of townhouse there, but the actual design of them and the impact it has on the neighboring streets. And from what I understand, that still has to be worked out. I would strongly suggest that the applicant sit with the planning staff over the next little while and try and resolve that issue, because an appeal to the Ontario Municipal Board right now is no longer a heavy hand on council, it's now a heavy hand on the applicant. Yesterday at committee, we had a number come forward. There's 130,000 housing units currently being held up at appeals. Never mind the number of appeals, the number of housing units, because of the surge of appeals due to the changing of the governance of at the Ontario Municipal Board, which is now causing a backup of 5 to 7 years before a hearing might happen on applications. No one is objecting on this site to the zoning, but what the councillor doesn't want, and I understand staff are supportive of that, is to have the zoning in place and the property sold, because it's not the end builder apparently on this site with the design, and then the issues come up at site plan that are not resolved. So I think if you want to be able to have the zoning on the site in regard to the applicant, you're going to have to make a further investment in defining the site plan or the issues thereabout to bring this closer to what we want to be able to deal with it and approve it, so we know and have a better idea of what's being constructed on the site. And I think that's not so difficult to resolve. I understand the concern was being to meet with a local councillor, but you don't have to meet with a local councillor. You have to meet with planning staff, which is what we look for. You have to have something that's reasonable. They'll make the recommendations. They'll consult with the local councillor as well. And hopefully there'll be an ability for the applicant staff to resolve this before our summer break and have the settlement go through. Satisfied, and we'll
So
support
we're
Councillor
voting on
Phillips.
Councillor Fillion's motion. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Councillor Robinson, item 10.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I have a motion to extend the notice area.
Go ahead.
If you could just put it on the screen, it's just extending it to make sure the entire neighborhood's included. If the clerk could put it on the screen. Okay, it's coming. To extend the notice area to the broader community so they can be involved in this application. And so I'll read it. Do I need to read it, Madam Chair? Or?
No, it's okay.
Okay, so I'd like to move that.
Are there any questions? Any statements? All in favor?
Preliminary report.
Opposed? Carried. Item 32, I believe. 367 Joycey Boulevard. Is anyone here to deal with this item? Welcome, you have 5 minutes.
Hi. Sorry, I have no voice. My name's Christine Grabowski. I live at 367 Joycey Boulevard. My husband and I have lived there since about 2011. When we purchased this home, we loved the thought of having a backyard. We dreamt of ways that we could make it more enjoyable. We have several medium-sized trees in our yard that continue to pollinate year-round, it seems, and the droppings have caused a lot of damage to our deck and surrounding lawn. My husband has had to resand and power wash the deck 2 to 3 times a year, but to no avail. It continues to look tattered and soiled. It's literally falling apart and is visually unappealing. The lawn does not grow because it gets no sun, and it barely gets respite from tree droppings. The ground is uneven due to roots and tree growth. As a family, we cannot enjoy our yard. We continue to discuss ways that we could improve the look of our backyard and dreamt of a complete backyard overhaul. This past spring, we decided we would like to install an in-ground pool, and as part of a complete backyard renovation. We contacted half a dozen companies to obtain quotes and invested a lot of time and energy into planning and landscape. We hired an arborist, as we assumed we would need to get a permit to remove one large and very crooked tree from the center of our yard. I don't mean to sound trite, but feel that I must mention that when we were discussing our plans with our neighbors, so many of them suggested that we simply cut the trees down without going through the process of involving the city. They felt that it was easier to beg for forgiveness and ask for permission. We decided to respect the process and the city and applied via the proper avenues. I took the day off from work and applied in person, paid the required fees, submitted and resubmitted requested diagrams and information. A few weeks later, a sign was put up on our lawn that made neighbors aware of our intentions. To my knowledge, no neighbors complained or contacted the office. I was quite surprised when I received an email a few weeks later stating their application had been denied. My understanding is that a city arborist from Urban Forestry came out to ascertain the validity of our arborist report. Our arborist indicated that the tree is in fair condition and exhibits signs of honey locust plant bug infestation. Urban Forestry agreed that there is an infestation, but didn't think it was severe. Urban Forestry goes on to say that in the report that the significant damage to our deck is likely caused by this not severe infestation of sap-sucking insects. He suggested that we power wash the deck and the actual tree itself a few times a year to dislodge the bugs from the tree. This is quite an onerous process to complete a few times a year and does not come without risks of damaging our deck and the tree itself. I've included a picture of our tattered and worn deck for illustration. Urban Forestry noted that at the time of inspection, the infestation had no visible impact on crown or vigor, but does comment on deadwood that can be maintained through pruning at a cost to us. He notes that the tree leans towards our home, but thinks it's structurally sound. He included a picture in his report, but I do not feel the angle he captured accurately demonstrates the severity of the lean. I've included a picture that I feel illustrates this more precisely. I personally feel that it will become a hazard as it grows larger, and fear for my family's safety in strong windstorms, and worry about the damage the falling tree could cause to any person or my home itself. Our new landscaping plan includes the replantation of at least half a dozen or more columnar trees for privacy around the perimeter of our property. In spite of this, we were also fully prepared to pay the fees associated with removing the trees. The city policy is that we pay a replanting cost of 3 trees for every tree that we remove, and we had no issue with this. As mentioned, we do plan on replanting half a dozen or more trees and accept the fact that these trees do not meet the city's criteria for replacement and thus plan on paying the fine. I just want to mention that we thought it was a little arbitrary that Urban Forestry suggested that if the city approves the removal of these trees, we are expected to pay for 5 replacement trees as cash in lieu of replanting. I feel the need to mention that our neighbor cut down a tree without going through the proper avenues, and his penalty for not following this process was to pay for 5 trees. I'm wondering why, when we are going through the proper channels, are we expected to pay more than the agreed upon penalty that the city deemed acceptable for others enjoying this process? In short, why should we have the same cost and fate as someone who broke the rules? Urban Forestry goes on to list the many benefits of mature trees in the neighborhood. He cites advantages such as improving quality of urban life, being aesthetically pleasing, and softening the hard lines of built forms. I dare suggest that having a beautifully landscaped yard with new trees, a pool and spa can do all of that and more. There's a mention of crime reduction and neighborhood cohesion due to the presence of trees, and although I can't speak to the specific statistics on that piece of information, because I've never seen or heard any evidence to support that, I find it illogical and can think of many examples that negate the assertion, and can think of similar reasons and advantages of having a safe backyard environment for my children and their friends and neighbors to grow up with.
Wrap up, please.
In summary, I hope that the City Council finds it reasonable to consider our appeal. We appreciate the values the trees can provide, and we plan on replanting as well. We don't want a backyard made of concrete and stone, and we have a plan that includes green space.
There's a question of you.
I just
Councillor
have a
Carmichael Greb?
quick question. You own this property that the tree is on?
Yes.
The tree is on private property?
Yes, it's
That you
private.
own, that you pay taxes on?
Yes,
You own the tree?
I would think so.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Speakers? Councillor? Okay, staff to the floor. Go ahead, Councillor.
In the report, it says that the tree is in fair condition. What does that mean? I understand good, I understand bad, I don't understand fair.
So when the report mentions that the tree is in fair condition, that's the assessment or the condition rating given by the property owner's arborist. So, the city staff rate trees as poor, hazardous, or healthy in our assessment. The arborist report that was submitted to us said that the tree does have a lean. He saw evidence of honey locust plant bug. He said the tree itself is structurally sound and the crown is well balanced.
So do you
There
think
is
that-
deadwood, but it's due to a lack of maintenance, and that's a maintainable.
So your assessment is that it's in good condition?
Yes.
Okay,
healthy.
sorry, okay, so my misunderstanding. And so, okay, I just wanna, the deputant did make a good point about this replacement tree thing. So if someone were to go to just cut down their tree, and we go out, what is the cost to them? So we say, okay, you have to do the 5 tree maximum? If they cut down their tree without permission?
I believe for a contravention where there's evidence that a tree was removed without a permit,
Right.
The compliance that they would seek is 5 replacement trees for the one removed. And that's acknowledging that the property owner removed the tree without going through the proper process and denied the city and community council of making the decision.
Okay.
When a tree goes on appeal to community council, our default is the 5-to-1 because urban forestry's recommendation is that the replanting proposed and due to the health of the tree, removal just can't be compensated.
So
at
they're
one
kind of
time.
the same.
Yeah.
Okay. Are there, if one were to cut down their tree without permission, are there any additional costs?
So associated with the contravention, there's a contravention inspection fee.
How much?
It's approximately $600 for a city tree, and I believe double the application, around $200 for a private tree.
City trees 600?
Yeah, it's approximately double the application fees that what somebody would normally be paying.
Right, but then, okay, so 600, okay. Now, if I were to go through the proper channels, I'd pay 313, right?
For a city tree. So the application fee for a private tree, non-construction is less than that.
How much?
I believe it's around 100.
So 100, okay. And then I would have to get an arborist report, correct?
Correct.
I think that was 395 from the last.
It's a variable cost. It's a private industry, so we don't control the cost or prices that people, pay. It's the same as any contractor where you would get quotations and find the person that
Probably
you want.
about 400 is probably fair. So the cost, if you were to do it illegally, is 5 trees plus $600. If you do the whole process legally and you ultimately get turned down, it's 5 trees plus $500. So the incentive to actually follow the rules is about $100. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I guess in terms of the costing, the difference would be the arborist report.
Other than wanting to be a good citizen and all that stuff. Okay, thanks.
Okay, speakers, Councillor Carmichael Grab? No.
Yes, I will be moving alternate recommendations that City Council approve the request for a permit to remove one privately owned tree located at 367 Joycey Boulevard, conditional upon the owner providing 5 replacement trees, which can be achieved in combination of on-site planting and cash in lieu of planting. We have a real problem in this city when we as government are telling residents who pay taxes, who own their own property, that they cannot do something on their property within means. I'm not saying go and build a house or anything like that, but to cut down a tree for specific landscaping requirements and for care of their property when they are going to replant more trees in better condition than the one that's already there. And as Councillor Burnside has pointed out through his questioning, there's really no incentive for residents to go through the proper process. It's more often than not, they're turned down and then they go to, or if they're approved here, they go to council and they're turned down there. So I do not see how in this city we are encouraging people to follow the processing and keep trees when the process is so onerous and so against private property rights and homeowners.
Thank you. Oh, Councillor Carroll?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm going to be moving the staff recommendations to deny the removal of the tree, and I agree that we're not maybe as straight with folks as we should be. This resident may well find herself back here soon enough, unless some counter-site person had the foresight to tell them this. The real reason for wanting to remove this tree is to redo the backyard, but we do actually have a say in people's backyards. We tell them whether or not they can have chickens, and some of us had pretty strong opinions about whether or not they should have chickens back there. We tell them they have to put pools around their fence, and in this one there's an attachment here of a drawing that we're removing this tree to put in a pool that is going to bring this person back to this chamber, because currently the drawing shows that the pool will not be fenced in. So we aren't as straight with people as we ought to be. And I know that in the case of forestry, they are beginning to tell people that the council reputation is pretty consistent, particularly in this term of office. We have been supporting staff in their evaluations, and so I'm going to be moving staff recommendations here. And I hope that the resident will definitely talk to their designer, because They need to be designing a backyard so that the pool can be entirely enclosed.
I'm actually going to support Councillor Greb on this one. I came to the same conclusion, but for different reasons. I think to Councillor Carroll's point, being straight with people goes back to Councillor Cole's point, which is it really doesn't matter what we decide here. It's going to get overturned at City Council to protect the tree at all costs. I do disagree with Councillor Greb in terms of property rights. There is something that I believe in, which is the collective good, and there are obviously, without having to hear the benefits of trees for the 100th time, we know the benefits, so there are benefits of trees in the city. All that said, and why I'm going to support Councillor Greb, is that it just strikes me as wrong, well, odd to begin with, but then ultimately wrong, that when someone goes through the proper channels, the difference between going through the proper channels and just cutting down a tree and rolling the dice, which so many people do, is potentially $100. There has to be some sort of reward for good behavior. And so I'll be supporting Councillor Greb's motion.
Okay. We have the councillor's motion. All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4. Against? 1, 2, 3, 4. It loses on a tie vote. Councillor Carroll had placed the motion to adopt. All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4.
Opposed?
Opposed? 1, 2, 3, 4.
Loses, goes to council without recommendation.
Okay.
Should we just do that with every tree that comes before us, is just send them to council without recommendation? No, I know, but
We have 3 items left.
Why waste our time?
Item 33, is there anyone here who would like to speak to this item? Yes? Welcome, sir. You have 5
Afternoon.
minutes.
My name is Mark Gurgis. I'm the owner of 5 Chieftain, and I'm requesting to remove a city tree in front of my property. The property is under construction, and the reasons for this request is basically two reasons. This is a copy of the Arborist report that was submitted to the city. Tree in question is number 7, and as pointed here, the tree condition is poor by the Arborist report. And the Arborist report reads the following. I'm going to read it quickly. It's one line. I don't know if it's very clear. It says here that the tree structure integrity is fair and poor, and the crown vigor is fair. A large wound at the base of the tree reveals that the main stem has integrity issues. So this is a poor tree by the looks of it. Have some pictures for the tree to show. This is the tree. It has a problem at the base of it. And in June, with a little bit of rain and a little bit of wind, the tree lost a very big branch, as shown by this picture. It lost a very big branch just as a result of some wind and some rain. This is the branch that was cut by the tree. It's over about 20 feet long or maybe longer. Just by some, if this has fallen onto my sons, I have 2 sons, or on any of our cars, it would have been a big problem for us. That's the first reason why I'm requesting for this tree to be removed. The second reason, which is also a strong reason for myself, this is the approved plan that we submitted to the city, the building department, that was approved, and this is based on how we got the permit. This calls for a driveway of I don't know if you can see it here, but it says here 4.57, the size of the driveway, 4.57 meters. And unfortunately, we started the building, and we just got something from the city saying that we are not allowed to have this. The reason is because there's a hydro pole right here at this point at the left side of the driveway, and the tree in question is on the right-hand side of the driveway. And now we are asked by the staff to have the following driveway, which is going to look like this. This is a 100-feet property. The frontage is 100 feet, and the property has 3-car garage. And now we are forced to have a driveway that will only fit 1 car, the way it shows. So it's going to look also like a maze. So to go in and out of this of our property, we have to go to the left, go up, and then go into a narrow tunnel between the pole, hydro pole, and the tree. Which is, I'm very concerned about that for the safety of myself and my family. With a little bit of snow in the winter months, we would have accumulation of snow on both sides of the driveway, and it will be, and the entry to the house, which is 100 feet property, would be the size of 1 car if we keep the tree. And that causes a lot of concern to me and to my family, that this is going to be, with any slippage, with any snow slippage or any accumulation of snow, it's going to be really, really difficult to go in and out of our property. Again, as I mentioned, the tree is poor. The tree's condition is not healthy. It's poor in accordance to the arborist report. And we are willing to pay the cost of the tree, and we are willing to pay for the replacement of the tree. And as I mentioned, there is a concern to me and to my family about the safety, and also that we have submitted an application, a building application, to City of Toronto Building Department based on a 4.57 driveway, and we got approved. And now we are forced, without our even permission, someone decided that the driveway has to be 3 meter only because they had to reserve this tree, and because we cannot remove the pole on the other side. So this is a very difficult situation, and I would appreciate your consideration into this matter.
Thank you. We have a question of you, Councillor
Sure.
Carroll.
Quick question, and only one question. When you submitted these plans to the city, you would have shown the tree in your drawings. I believe they would have told you you will have to seek approval to remove that tree.
No, that was not the condition. No one mentioned anything to us, and this is being a very large property. It's 100 by 150. It has a lot of trees already, and I'm willing to replace this tree, which is not healthy. I'm
Who
willing.
made the visit to the counter, yourself or your contractor?
My contractor, myself, and we submitted an application based on an arborist report, based on surveys by our surveyors. We submitted all that to the city, and we got approved for a 4.57, and now we are forced, without nobody even consulted us. I got a letter saying that the driveway is going to be 3 meter, and I went and I tried to oppose that, and I got denied because of the tree.
And why did they tell you it was going to be 3 meters?
Because it's in between a hydro pole and a tree. We cannot have the driveway close to the hydro pole. We have to push it away from the hydro pole.
Right.
Pushing it away will make it closer to the tree, so we cannot have our 4.57. Now we are requested to, in accordance to this drawing, to cut it down on the left and cut it down on the right because of the tree on one side and the pole on the other side. And there's no other way for us to go in and out of the property. And as I mentioned, it's a large property, has a lot of trees, and I'm willing to even add more trees if that gonna help the decision.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any more questions? Thank you very much. You may be seated.
Thank you.
Councillor Robinson? Councillor Carroll?
Yeah, Madam Speaker, I hope people had a chance to look at this. I can only assume that we are following our procedures. When people apply, I think it's a flaw in the process, and I have sympathy for the owner. I think we should be stopping them right then and there, but what they are generally told is, oh, by the way, there's a tree here, and only council can remove a tree. That is basically what folks are told. I was once told it my own self, fixing my own house. But if you look at the picture, there is enough footprint to build the house without building this tree, because as you can see, it's already framed in this picture. There is enough room for a 3-meter driveway that a substantial sized car, even my Grand Caravan, would pull up this driveway. And they are allowing us how further pavement can be put on the front lawn once you're north of the sidewalk. And by doing that, what we leave in place is a Norway maple. And we know that that is almost the sacred tree in this city. And I think that what we have to do is start to be as sincere and as sympathetic with folks as possible. A branch breaking off a Norway maple in extreme weather does not mean the tree is sick. It means we have extreme weather that is destroying our tree canopy, and that's why we fight to save trees. And that's why I'm moving the staff recommendations. Thank you.
Madam Chair, I'm going to vote against the councillor's motion, Councillor Carroll's motion to support the residents' request.
All right, we have the vote on Councillor Carroll's motion. All in favor? Against? It carries. Thank you. Item 34. Mr. Jiu, I'm sorry if I'm not pronouncing it properly. Are you here? Yes?
So Mr. Yu is here, but he has advised he doesn't need to speak.
Okay.
And I'm happy to move the motion that has been prepared by the staff, essentially moving the staff recommendation number 2 with the condition that the corrugated fence not be permitted between the property line and essentially the front of the building, so that no views are obstructed. So staff recommendation 2 with that minor condition.
Yes. Staff to the floor, please. Councillor
Just a
Carroll?
quick question of staff, because I believe the motion number 2 allows that they can use sheet metal. Why does our bylaw not want sheet metal? These are very industrial properties.
Industrial area, and people cut through the fence to go steal its metal. But the basically requires.
Through you, Madam Chair. Counselor, I couldn't answer that question without having to do some research with our policy people as to why it was decided that corrugated and sheet metal would not be permitted materials.
But it's likely only aesthetic in nature.
In all likelihood, yes.
Okay. And these are not, I don't think it's even viewable from the street as far as I can tell.
It's an industrial area between.
It's completely an industrial zone, yes.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. That's my only question, Madam Speaker. I'm ready.
Okay. Any other speakers? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Item 34. So the next item is the one that's the additional item, 48. And I believe we've done everything else. Is that right? Yes? So this is a reopening. I explained it at the beginning of the meeting. Are there any questions? Yes, Councillor Burnside.
New recommendation, sorry, to recommendation 2, I guess it would be, prohibit parking and at the times and dates stated, correct?
Yes.
My concern is that with just prohibiting parking, it still allows people to load and unload passengers or things. My question is, would it be better to prohibit stopping, which is an outright prohibition on letting passengers in and out of the car or goods? I'm wondering if that might be a little more effective.
Could we ask staff?
Yeah, sorry, okay, that's.
Yeah. Staff to the floor, please. Would you mind answering that?
With respect to, through you, Madam
Do
Speaker.
you want me to ask the question again? I'm happy to.
You come prepared.
Yeah.
Certainly.
Okay, so as my understanding of parking prohibitions go, you're still able to load and unload people and or things.
That is correct, Councillor.
Right, and I guess it's $30 fine. A no stopping means you can't load or unload people, accessible permits don't matter, and the fine is pretty much, I think, about twice, double. It's more effective, especially in a school zone where parents could potentially argue that they're letting their kids out or waiting for the kids or whatever, correct?
That is correct, Councillor. I would also add on the opposite side of the street, there is an existing stopping prohibition.
So are you okay with just the no, because my concern is that with a parking prohibition, you're still gonna get people on that side of the street. Are you trying to eliminate on that side of the street or not?
I understand now. As you know, this came from the parents this morning. And they informed us that the school lets out at 3:30. And so if we changed the time from 3:30 to 4 o'clock, when they can park on the opposite side of the
Okay.
street, it would give them more flexibility.
Okay, so that's fine then.
Thank you. Thank you for raising it. Any other questions? Okay, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Do you need a recorded vote, Francine? Do you need to show that it was 2/3? Counselor Cole, you have a motion to introduce and enact certain bills.
In my hand, Madam Chair, that the North York Community Council pass and declare as bylaws Bills 14 to 25 and Bill 68, prepared for the January 16, 2018 meeting 27 of the Community Council.
Shall these bills be passed and declared as a bylaw? All in favor?
Recorded vote.
Okay. Oh, this is Shelley's last
Well,
community
recorded
council.
vote.
Okay, all in favor? Councilors Burnside, Carroll, Robinson, Fillion, Pasternak, Ajamari, Carmichael, Greb, Cole, and Peruzza. Thank you.
Why is it her last meeting?
Okay. It carries. Councilor Burnside, you have a motion to introduce and enact the confirming bill.
I do, that the North York Community Council pass and declare as a bylaw a confirmatory bill to confirm the legislative proceedings of the North York Community Council acting under delegated authority at meeting 27 on January 16, 2018.
Shall this bill be passed and declared as a bylaw? All in favor? Opposed? Carried? And we wish you well, Councilor Carroll, even though you're not paying attention. Thank you.